You're watching Noir Lane. I'm your host, David. Remember, every story hides a secret, and every shadow hides a clue. Tell us what part of the world you're watching from. Subscribe and hit the like button. Join us in the mystery, and let's dive into the story. Chapter 1. If you live in New York long enough, you learn a useful lesson. Money is honest only when it is asleep in a vault. The minute it wakes up and starts walking around, it lies, it sweats, and it tries to buy things it has no right to own. That afternoon at the brownstone, Nero Wolfe's money was not walking around at all. Wolfe had been in a mood that resembled a large cat's contempt for the entire species of mice. And the only creature he was willing to tolerate besides Fritz was Theodore Horseman. Because Horseman arrived precisely at 4 with orchids, and never pretended he wanted anything. I was at my desk, sorting the mail into 3 piles: bills, nuisances, and bills pretending to be nuisances. Fritz had given Wolfe an early lunch that smelled like it could make a saint reconsider virtue, and Wolfe had retired to his office with a book, and the kind of silence that usually means he is either thinking or practicing being offended. At 3:30 Fritz appeared in the doorway, hands folded, face polite. "A gentleman to see you, Mr. Wolfe. He says his name is Mr. Grant Mercer." Wolfe's eyes did not lift from the page. "I have not invited him." "He says he has come about a matter of life and death," Fritz replied. Wolfe turned a page with slow dignity. "Then he should go to the police." Fritz's gaze flicked toward me. I had learned long ago that Fritz is a better judge of urgency than Wolfe pretends to be. Fritz had that faint tightening at the corners of his eyes that meant the visitor was either important or alarming. I said, "Send him in, Fritz. If it turns out to be a funeral salesman, we'll make him pay for the disturbance." Wolfe's head turned toward me, heavy. "Archie." "I know," I said. "You dislike surprises. So do I. That's why we let them in where we can see them." Wolfe made a low sound that was not agreement, but wasn't refusal either. Fritz nodded and went to fetch the gentleman. Grant Mercer walked in like a man used to doors opening when he approached. He was in his late 40s, neatly dressed, good coat, good shoes, good hair, and the kind of face that had learned to smile at people without letting the eyes participate. His smile was there, polite, practiced, and empty, like a handshake from a banker who is about to foreclose. He carried nothing in his hands, except a thin sealed file envelope, the heavy kind with a string tie, tucked under his arm like a document that wanted privacy. His eyes moved quickly, taking in Wolfe in the red leather chair, then me at the desk, then the room, as if he were memorizing exits. That is always an interesting trait in a rich man. Wolfe studied him over the top edge of his book. "You are Grant Mercer?" "Yes," Mercer said. His voice was smooth, the kind a man uses when he expects to be listened to. "Mr. Wolfe, thank you for seeing me." Wolfe's mouth tightened. "I did not thank you. Sit." Mercer sat in the red chair, posture upright, hands folded. The file stayed tucked against his side. Wolfe said, "State your business." Mercer's smile widened slightly, still not touching his eyes. "I need your protection." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "From what?" "From a man who wants me dead," Mercer said, as calmly as if he were ordering soup. I watched him. People who say that usually either whisper it or shout it. Mercer delivered it like a line he had practiced in front of a mirror. Wolfe said, "You have come to me instead of the police." Mercer nodded. "Yes." "Why?" Wolfe asked. Mercer's gaze flicked once toward the file. "Because the police contain a man who would rather see me dead than protected." That earned a small shift in Wolfe's expression. Wolfe's attention sharpened when a client threatens to involve his favorite irritation, which is official incompetence. Wolfe said, "Be specific." Mercer's smile did not change. "I will." He placed the sealed file on the edge of Wolfe's desk carefully, as if the desk might object. The envelope was thick enough to hold a small stack of papers. It was sealed with wax and stamped with a simple mark, an M inside a circle. Wolfe stared at it as if it were something damp and unfriendly. "What is that?" "My payment," Mercer said. Wolfe's nostrils flared. "I am paid in money." Mercer's eyes stayed steady. Not today. Wolf leaned back. Heavy. Then you have wasted your trip. Mercer's smile finally shifted, not warmer but sharper. I have not brought you a checkbook, Mr. Wolf. I have brought you leverage. Wolf's eyes hardened. Leverage is another word for blackmail. Mercer's voice remained smooth. You can label it any way you like. The contents of that file can topple powerful men. It can also keep me alive. Wolf's lips compressed. I do not trade in blackmail. Mercer did not argue. He simply looked at Wolf as if he expected Wolf to be intelligent enough to understand the world as it is rather than as it should be. Wolf said, Remove it. Mercer's hand did not move. If I remove it, I leave with nothing. Wolf's voice was colder. Then leave. Mercer inhaled slowly. When he spoke again, the smoothness stayed, but there was something tight underneath it. You have a reputation, Mr. Wolf, he said. You are proud of it. You have built it on reason and integrity. I came because I believe you will not allow a murderer to use the law as a weapon. Wolf's eyes narrowed. You presume. Mercer's gaze held. I do not presume. I know something. That made the air in the office tighten. Wolf hates being told what he will do. It is one of his most reliable irritations. Wolf said, What do you know? Mercer tapped the file lightly with one finger. That file names someone close to the law. Wolf's eyes did not move, but I saw the slight shift in his posture. Wolf reacts to information the way a large cat reacts to a sudden sound, stillness first, then focus. Who? Wolf asked. Mercer's smile returned, and this time it looked like a man enjoying his own advantage. If I tell you, I lose my only shield. That defeats the purpose. Wolf's voice turned hard. Then you are attempting to coerce me. Mercer nodded once, unashamed. Yes. Wolf stared at him. For a moment I thought Wolf might order him thrown out on principle, which would have been inconvenient but consistent. Wolf's pride is a stubborn animal, but so is his curiosity. And when the two lock horns, the rest of us usually end up cleaning up the furniture. I cleared my throat. Mr. Mercer, you came with no money and a file you won't open. That's an awkward pitch. Try giving us something concrete. Mercer's gaze shifted to me. You are Archie Goodwin. That's what they call me, I said. When they don't, they call me after I've hit them. His lips twitched faintly. You want concrete. All right. The man who wants me dead is not a thug. He is polished. He wears suits and smiles at charity dinners. He has people who do things quietly. That describes most of Manhattan. Mercer continued. The file contains proof of a private arrangement. Money moved, favors exchanged, a death covered up. Wolf's eyes narrowed. A death. Mercer's smile faded a fraction. Yes, Wolf said. If you are in possession of evidence of a crime, you should deliver it to the district attorney. Mercer's eyes turned colder, and watch it vanish, like other things have vanished. That line landed. Wolf dislikes vanishing evidence because it insults his belief in order. Wolf's voice was deliberate. You are offering me a file as payment. You refuse to open it. You claim it names someone close to the law. You claim you are threatened by a powerful man. You expect me to take your case without money, without facts, and without dignity. Mercer's smile returned, and now it looked tired. I expect you to do what you do best, Mr. Wolf. I expect you to see what is true. Wolf's face went heavy. The way it does when he is weighing two distasteful options. You will leave that file with me. Mercer's smile sharpened. Yes, Wolf continued. You will provide Archie Goodwin with an account of your movements for the past week, the names of your associates, and the nature of the threats you have received. You will not attempt to direct my actions with hints and mysteries. If you do, I will expel you. Mercer nodded slowly. Agreed, Wolf added, and you will pay me. Mercer's eyes flicked. With money. Yes, Wolf said, as if explaining basic arithmetic to a chair. I will not accept blackmail as currency. I will not accept leverage. I will accept a fee. Mercer hesitated. For the first time his smile faltered. I told you, I did not bring a checkbook. Wolf's voice turned icy. Then you will arrange payment within 24 hours. If you cannot, you will leave and take your file with you. I will not be made an accomplice to your schemes. Mercer's jaw tightened. Fine, 24 hours. Wolf nodded once. Good, now speak. Mercer began talking, and I began writing. He had received anonymous warnings he had been followed. His town car driver had found a note tucked under the wiper. He had been told, indirectly but clearly, that he would die if he spoke to the wrong people. He described dinners, meetings, names that sounded like people who owned more buildings than friends. He did not mention the powerful man's name, but he circled it like a dog circling a bone. He wanted us to ask. He wanted Wolf to pry. Wolf does not like being led. When Mercer finished, Wolf stared at him for a long moment. You will go now, Wolf said. Mercer rose. His smile returned, still empty. You will keep the file sealed. Wolf's eyes narrowed. That depends on whether I decide it is necessary to open it. Mercer's smile tightened. If you open it, you understand what happens. Yes, Wolf said. I will become informed. That is what happens. Mercer looked at me. Mr. Goodwin, I trust you will be discreet. I'm discreet when it pays, I said. Try not to get dead before we invoice you. His lips twitched faintly, then he left. Fritz came in after the door closed and looked at Wolf. Shall I bring beer, sir? Not yet, Wolf said. That alone told me Wolf was uneasy, because beer is Wolf's way of declaring the world manageable, I said. He's slick. Wolf's eyes narrowed. He is desperate. Desperate men do foolish things, I agreed. They also do dangerous things, Wolf said, gaze fixed on the sealed file as if it were a snake with good stationery. I leaned back in my chair. Do you want it opened? Wolf's mouth tightened. Number, that means yes, I said. Wolf ignored me and pressed his lips together, thinking, he has attempted to purchase my services with corruption. I refuse. Yet he has placed before me the prospect of a criminal within the law. That is irritating. That's a gentle word, I said. Wolf's gaze shifted to me. Archie, telephone Inspector Kramer. Tell him we have received a visit from Grant Mercer. I blinked. Tell Kramer. That's either bold or reckless. It is prudent, Wolf corrected. If Mercer's fears are justified, his death may occur soon. I will not have it said that I concealed his approach. I picked up the phone and called Kramer. Kramer grunted, asked why he should care, and then swore when I told him Mercer had hinted someone close to the law was named in a sealed file. Wolf sticking his nose in my house again, Kramer growled. Your house has bad ventilation, I told him. Try cleaning it. Wolf went upstairs for orchids. Fritz served dinner. The brownstone settled into its usual rhythm of books, food, and Wolf's insistence that chaos remain outside. At 10:30, the telephone rang again. I answered. Goodwin. The voice on the line was not Kramer's. It was a cop I didn't know. Tight and professional. This is Sergeant Mallory, Midtown North. Are you Archie Goodwin? Yes, I said, and my stomach tightened. Your name was found in a man's appointment book, the sergeant said. Grant Mercer. He's dead. I felt the air go cold. Dead where? In his town car, Mallory replied. Parked on East 50. 7th driver found him slumped in the back seat. No sign of struggle. Looks like he was killed where he sat. I looked at Wolf. He had gone still, eyes fixed on me. I said into the phone, we spoke to Mercer this afternoon. Inspector Kramer will want details, Mallory said. Also, we searched the vehicle. Mercer was reported to be carrying a sealed file envelope. I gripped the receiver. And there was no file, Mallory said. Nothing like it in the car. No envelope, no papers, like it never existed. I hung up slowly and stared at Wolf. Wolf's voice was quiet, heavy. Bring me the file. I went to the safe where I had put it earlier at Wolf's instruction. The sealed envelope was there, exactly where it should be. wax intact, string tied. I carried it into Wolf's office and set it on his desk. Wolf stared at it for a moment, then said, "So Mercer is dead, and the file vanishes from his life, but not from mine." I swallowed. That means someone else knew he brought it here. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Or someone is now determined that it must not be opened. I felt my skin prickle, and if it names someone close to the law like he hinted. Wolf's gaze lifted cold and focused. Then we are already in danger, Archie, because the file is no longer leverage. It is a target. The sealed envelope sat on the desk between us, quiet and smug. And for the first time that day, the brownstone did not feel like a refuge. It felt like the center of a circle, with something moving around it in the dark. Chapter 2. Inspector Kramer arrived at the brownstone, the way he always arrives, at anything he does not like. With noise first and suspicion close behind it, Fritz showed him in, and Kramer's hat came off, only because his temper needed the space. He was built for disapproval. His shoulders looked as if they had been designed to carry other people's errors, and his face had the expression of a man who had been up half the night, discovering that criminals do not schedule themselves around his convenience. "You," he said to me, as if my name had been replaced by an accusation. "Where's Wolf?" "In the office," I said, "where the furniture is strongest." Kramer snorted and marched in. His shoes made the rug suffer. Wolf was in his chair, of course, heavy and composed, as if policemen were seasonal pests, and this one had arrived early. The sealed envelope sat on his desk in plain view. Wolf had put it there on purpose. When Wolf wants to bait someone, he does not use hooks. He uses dignity. Kramer's eyes went straight to the envelope. His scowl deepened. "So," he growled, "you had him here." Wolf's tone was mild. "Good morning, Inspector. Yes, he came. He attempted to hire me with moral sewage. I refused." Kramer stepped closer, looming at the desk. "He's dead." Wolf's eyes narrowed slightly. "Yes. You are repeating what I already know." Kramer slapped a folded paper onto Wolf's desk. "Your name was in his book. Your address too. That makes you part of this, whether you like it or not." Wolf looked at the paper without touching it. "I dislike it." "I don't care what you dislike," Kramer snapped. "I care about who killed Mercer and why. And I care about that file he was carrying." Wolf's gaze flicked to the envelope. "This file." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "That's it," Wolf said. "It is." Kramer leaned forward. "Then open it." Wolf's mouth tightened. Number Kramer's face reddened. "Wolf, a man is dead." "Yes," Wolf said. "And you have come here to make that my fault." Kramer's fist clenched. "Not your fault, your hobby. You collect corpses the way other men collect stamps." Wolf did not react. He can absorb Kramer's anger, the way a stone absorbs rain. It does not mean he enjoys it. "I did not kill Mercer," Wolf said. "If you require a confession, find a man with weaker principles." Kramer took a breath, forced it out, and then barked toward the hall. "Bring her in." Fritz appeared, and behind him came a woman in a good coat, hair pinned neatly, face pale, eyes sharp. She had the look of someone who works for a rich man and has learned to stay calm when the money shakes. "This is Nina Dale," Kramer said, Mercer's assistant. Nina's gaze flicked to Wolf, then to me, then to the envelope. When she saw it, her mouth tightened. Not fear. Something like relief mixed with dread. "I declined," Wolf replied. "Yes," she said, "I remember." Kramer jabbed a finger at the envelope. "Tell him." Nina swallowed. "Mr. Mercer carried a sealed file yesterday. He took it with him when he left his office. He told me he was going to see Nero Wolf." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "He told you that?" "Yes," she said. "He wanted someone to know where he went." Wolf's voice was dry. A prudent habit for a man expecting to be murdered. Kramer snapped. "Did he open it in your presence?" "No," Nina said. "He kept it sealed. He said the contents were protection." "And he had it when he left," Kramer said. "Yes," Nina replied steady. "I watched him put it under his arm. He did not set it down. He did not hand it to anyone. It never left his hand." Kramer turned to Wolf. You hear that? Wolf's tone remained mild. I hear an assertion. Nina's eyes flashed. It is not an assertion, it is the truth. Grant Mercer was obsessive about that file. Then explain, Kramer demanded. How he ends up dead in his car, and the file is gone. Nina's jaw tightened. I cannot, that is why I am here, because something impossible happened. Wolf studied her for a long moment. Miss Dale, how long have you worked for Mercer? 3 years, she said. Did he have enemies? Wolf asked. Nina gave a short, humorless sound. He made enemies the way other men make friends. He was polite, he was generous, and he never forgot a debt. Kramer snorted. He had money. Nina's eyes cut to him. Yes, and he had secrets. He kept them like trophies. Wolf's gaze sharpened slightly, including those in that file. Nina nodded, swallowing. Yes. Kramer leaned closer to Wolf's desk. Open it. Now, if it names someone in my department, I need to know. Wolf's eyes narrowed. You need to know because you fear it. Kramer's face hardened. Because I'm responsible. Wolf's tone was flat. Do not claim virtue, Inspector. It is unbecoming. I cleared my throat. Maybe we can all enjoy the suspense together. If the file is here, opening it would settle one argument. Wolf looked at me, then back at the envelope, and I saw the calculation. Wolf dislikes being ordered. But Wolf dislikes ignorance even more. He also disliked Mercer's smug confidence. That file had dared him. All right, Wolf said. Kramer blinked. Nina's breath caught. Wolf did not touch the envelope. He looked at me. Archie. Yes, I said, and stood. Open it, Wolf instructed. In your careful manner, in view of Inspector Kramer and Miss Dale. Careful is my middle name, I said. It is not, Wolf replied, which was correct. I took the envelope, set it on my desk blotter, and examined the seal. Wax, stamped with the M mark. String tied. It looked intact. It looked smug. It looked like it was about to disappoint everyone. I slid a small knife under the string, cut it, and broke the wax seal with my thumb. The wax cracked cleanly. The flap lifted. I tipped the envelope gently. Nothing came out. I tipped it again, a little more. Still nothing. I looked inside. Empty. For a second the room went so quiet I could hear Wolf breathing, which is something you usually cannot do unless the house is asleep. Nina's face had gone white. Kramer's scowl faltered into surprise and then snapped back into anger. Nina said, Number. Kramer barked. What do you mean, empty? I held the envelope open. I mean it's empty. Nina took a step forward as if the envelope had insulted her. That's impossible. Grant carried it. It was sealed. It was thick. It was sealed, I said. Because the wax fragments were on my blotter and the flap was open. Nina stared at the inside like she expected the papers to materialize out of decency. They did not. Kramer slammed his palm on Wolf's desk. Wolf, what the hell is this? Wolf's face had gone heavier. His eyes narrowed to slits. He did not look surprised, he looked offended. Inspector, Wolf said, control your voice. This is my office. Kramer glared. That file was supposed to be evidence. It was supposed to be leverage, Wolf corrected. Nina's voice shook. He would not bring an empty envelope. He told me it could destroy men. Wolf's gaze shifted to her, and his tone softened by a fraction, which for Wolf is the equivalent of a hug. Miss Dale, you are honest. That is inconvenient for you but useful to me. Tell me exactly how you saw the envelope. Nina swallowed hard. It was in his hands, he carried it under his arm. It looked full. It bent slightly when he gripped it. I remember because he told me not to touch it ever. Wolf nodded once. He feared fingerprints. Kramer snapped. Or he feared the papers being swapped. I said, or removed. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Removed without breaking the seal. How? That was a good question. It was also the kind of question that gets answered by details people ignore. I held the envelope closer and studied the flap and seam. The paper was good quality, thick, the kind that feels expensive. The flap edges were clean. Then my eye caught a faint smear on the underside near the fold. A tiny streak of blue-black that didn't match the wax. I turned it slightly under the desk lamp. Ink, not a printed logo. Not a signature. A smear, small and fresh, like someone had touched it with a finger that had been handling newly printed paper. I said, "Hold it." Kramer snapped. "Did he open it in your presence?" "Printer ink," I said, and pointed. "Here, on the flap." Kramer leaned in. Nina leaned in too, but her eyes were on the empty cavity, not on my finger. Kramer growled. "That could be anything." "It could," I said, "but it looks fresh. It doesn't look like yesterday's dried residue. It looks like someone had wet ink on their fingers and then handled the flap recently." Wolf did not move, but his eyes tightened. "You are suggesting that the envelope was handled after Mercer left his office?" "Yes," I said, "or handled by someone who had been around fresh print within the last few hours." Nina whispered. "Grant didn't print anything last night." Kramer snapped. "You don't know what he did last night." Nina's eyes flared. "I know his habits." Wolf's voice was calm. "Habits are not alibis." Kramer jabbed a finger at the envelope. "This is a trick. You opened it, the papers fell out. You hid them." I looked at him. "Inspector, if I were going to hide something, it would be your tie." Kramer's face reddened. "Don't get smart. I can't help it," I said. Wolf lifted a hand. "Enough. Inspector Kramer, you are wrong. Archie Goodwin is many things. He is not clumsy enough to conceal papers in front of you. The more pressing point is this." Wolf's voice deepened. "The killer did not steal paper. The killer stole control." Kramer stared. "Control of what?" Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Control of whoever fears what was in that file." Nina's face tightened. "Summoner is afraid of it." "Yes," Wolf said. "And that person has acted quickly. Mercer is dead. The contents are gone. That sequence is not random. It is a protective action." Kramer leaned forward. "You think the papers were removed before Mercer was killed?" Wolf's gaze held. "Or removed at the moment of his death. The timing will matter. But the intent is clear. Whoever arranged Mercer's death did not want the file's contents accessible. Not to me, not to you, not to anyone." Nina's hands clenched. "Grant died for nothing." Wolf's voice was cold. "No one dies for nothing. They die because someone finds it profitable." Kramer took a breath, forced it out, and pointed at me. You're coming down to the car scene. You'll look at it, you'll tell me what you see, and you'll keep your jokes to yourself." "I'll do my best," I said, which is what I always say when I do not intend to do my best. Kramer swung toward Wolf. "And you stay here?" Wolf's eyes narrowed. That was not in doubt. Nina's gaze flicked between Wolf and the empty envelope. "Mr. Wolf, if the file is empty, then why did Mercer come here?" Wolf looked at her, heavy and precise. "Because he believed he could place his safety in my hands. He was wrong." Nina swallowed. "What do I do?" Wolf's tone was flat. "You do not go home alone. You do not speak to reporters. You do not trust anyone who asks you what Mercer said. And you will return here later today, because I will have questions." Kramer snorted. "You're not running this." Wolf's gaze did not shift. "I am always running this, Inspector. You are merely loud." Kramer glared, then jerked his head at me. "Move," as I followed him out. I glanced back at Wolf. He was staring at the empty envelope on my desk, eyes narrowed, like he was watching an enemy he had not yet named. I had the ink smear in my head, small and fresh, like a fingerprint made of impatience. Somebody had handled that envelope recently, and not with respect. That meant the file's contents were not just missing. They were in someone's hands right now, and whoever had them was afraid enough to kill for control. Chapter 3. Mercer's office was in one of those midtown buildings that look as if they were designed by a committee of men who all hated windows. The lobby was marble, the air was chilled, and the doorman had the careful eyes of a man who has seen every version of panic except his own. Kramer drove me there in a police car that smelled like stale coffee and irritated authority. He sat beside me, jaw set, as if my mere presence had increased his blood pressure. A uniform in the front seat kept his eyes forward and pretended not to listen, which was a lie. "You keep showing up," Kramer growled, as we bounced through traffic. "I'm reliable," I said, "like a headache." "You're a nuisance," he said. "Occupational hazard," I told him. "It comes with the job and the suit." We reached the building and walked in under the stare of the doorman and the half-curious, half-relieved look of the people who worked there. They all wanted to know what had happened, and they all wanted to know it had happened to someone else. The lobby guard, a thick man with a mustache and a posture built from hours of standing, met Kramer with the eagerness of a man who knew he would be questioned anyway. "Inspector," he said, "we've been waiting." Kramer flashed his badge like it was a weapon. "You're the night guard." "Day and night," the man said. "Name's Hennessy." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "Mercer's office now." Hennessy led us to the elevators and up. The higher we went, the quieter the building got, and the more expensive the silence felt. Mercer's floor was polished wood and glass, with a reception area that tried hard to look calm. It failed. Nina Dale was there, seated near her desk, face pale, hands folded too tightly. She rose when she saw us, and her eyes flicked to me as if she were seeking a familiar inconvenience. "Inspector Kramer," she said. Kramer grunted. "We're looking at the office." Nina swallowed. "Of course, I'll unlock it." She took a key from her purse. That was already interesting. Assistants have keys when they are trusted, or when they are required to clean up. She led us down a corridor to Mercer's door. The nameplate was still there, polished, clean. It looked ridiculous now, like a souvenir from a life that had been interrupted. Nina unlocked the door, and the smell inside was the smell of expensive paper, leather chairs, and a man who had liked control. Offices like Mercer's are not built for comfort. They are built for power. The desk was large, the chairs were heavy, the walls held framed photographs of Mercer shaking hands with men who smiled as if smiling were a transaction. Kramer stepped in first, because he likes claiming territory. I followed, because I like seeing things. The room looked orderly at first glance. No overturned chairs, no scattered papers, nothing that screamed struggle. Then I saw the wall safe. It was behind a framed print, mounted on hinges. The print was swung open. The safe door was open too. Kramer saw it at the same time. His mouth tightened. "That's been hit." Nina's face went whiter. Grant kept personal documents there, like a sealed file. Kramer snapped. Nina's lips pressed. She did not answer. I moved closer and looked into the safe empty shelves, a small velvet pouch that looked like it once held something, now flattened. A metal tray with paper clips, and on the bottom shelf, another envelope. Same heavy paper, same string tie, same wax seal stamp, an M inside a circle. Except this one was torn open at the side, crude and impatient. I picked it up carefully, using a pen as a lever, so my fingers did not smear anything. It felt light. I tipped it. "Empty, Kramer," I said, and held it up. He took it from me with gloved hands and peered inside. "Empty? Second empty envelope," I said. Nina's voice was tight. "Grant only had one file." I looked at her. "You said he was obsessive." "He was," she replied quickly. Too quickly. "I mean, yes, but he only spoke about one." Kramer grunted. "Two envelopes means either he duplicated it or somebody staged it." I moved to the desk. The surface was too clean. Mercer's kind of man does not work on a clean desk. He works on a desk crowded with reminders that he owns the air. I opened the top drawer. Pens, a blotter, a small stack of blank letterhead. The second drawer held folders neatly arranged. The third was locked. I looked at Nina. "Nina hesitated. then pulled a small ring from her pocket and handed it over. The hesitation was a note. She did not like giving keys away. I opened the drawer. Inside was a shredder bag, not the shredder itself. The bag, it was tied at the top, as if someone had removed it and set it carefully in the drawer. That was odd. Shredder bags live in the shredder bin, not in a desk drawer like a keepsake. I lifted it. It was heavier than it should have been. Kramer's eyes narrowed. "What's that?" "Shredded paper," I said. "But it doesn't belong in a drawer." I set it on the desk and untied it. Inside were shredded strips of paper, thin, uniform, the kind produced by a modern shredder that turns secrets into confetti. Except these strips looked too clean, too regular. Not mixed with anything. No coffee stains. No old scraps. No staples. It looked like a bag prepared for display. I pinched a few strips and held them up to the light. Some had faint print on them. Some had nothing. "Where's the shredder?" I asked Nina. "In the copy room," she said, and pointed down the corridor. He carried the bag into the copy room. The shredder sat by the wall. Its bin was empty. Empty. Kramer stood in the doorway, scowling. "They replaced the bag." "That's what it looks like," I said. Nina's voice was tight. "Grant shredded things all the time." "He also kept a bag of shreds in his locked drawer," I said. "Sure." Nina's eyes flashed. "He was cautious. Or someone wanted you to think he was," I said. I returned to the safe. The open safe bothered me. A thief who enters after hours and takes papers usually closes things. Open safe doors attract questions. I examined the safe style. No scratches, no forced entry. It had likely been opened with the combination. I said, "Who knows the safe combination?" Nina's mouth tightened. "Grant and me." Kramer's head snapped toward her. "You?" Nina's eyes went wide. "Yes," he insisted, "in case something happened." "Something happened," I said. Kramer's voice was rough. "When did you last open it?" Nina swallowed. "Yesterday morning." He asked me to retrieve a document. He watched me. He was nervous. "Did you see what was inside?" I asked. She shook her head quickly. "Number, I did not look." That was the kind of answer people give when they have looked and regret it. Kramer stared at her. "You're either hiding something or you're frightened." Nina lifted her chin. "Both can be true." That earned her a fraction of my respect. Honesty is rare, especially when it is uncomfortable. I looked around the office for the little things. Wastebasket, paper tray, calendar, phone. A man who plans to trade names at midnight does not rely on memory alone. The wall calendar had dates marked in neat hand, meetings, dinners, charity events. One date had been circled twice, today under it, written in small letters, midnight, no name, no place, just midnight. I tapped it. Midnight what? Nina's gaze flicked to it, then away. Her jaw tightened. Kramer growled. "Answer." Nina took a breath. "Grant said he had a meeting." "A meeting where?" I asked. She hesitated. "He didn't say." "Of course he didn't," I said. "He just said midnight and expected you to guess." Her eyes flashed. "He did not expect me to guess. He expected me not to ask." That was better. It sounded true. I moved to the desk phone. The call log was available on the display. There were calls yesterday afternoon, a few short ones, and one long one at 8:47 p.m., lasting 12 minutes. The number was listed as private. I looked at Nina. "Who did he speak to last night?" She swallowed. "I don't know." "You're the assistant," I said. Not knowing is a hobby for clients, not staff. Her mouth tightened. He made a call from his personal phone. "Then we find the personal phone," I said. Kramer's face hardened. "We didn't find a phone in the car." "No," I said, "which means it vanished too." Kramer made a sound of irritation. "Everything vanishes." "Not everything," I said, "only what matters." We went back to the reception area. Nina's desk had a neat stack of mail, a letter opener, and a small tray labeled work orders that caught my eye. Work orders, I said, and pointed. Nina's face tightened. Building maintenance requests. Light bulbs, air conditioning. Funny, I said. Because the guard downstairs mentioned a maintenance man. Kramer's head snapped toward Nina. What maintenance man? Nina blinked. I don't know. I looked at the tray. There were 2 printed forms. One was dated last week, for a leaky faucet in the men's room. The other was dated last night. Last night. I lifted it. The header was the building's facilities template. It listed, after hours access required. Reason safe inspection. Work order, number 7741. Contractor, Eddie Sloan. The signature line, the one that should have held the requester's name, was blank, I said. Nobody signed it. Nina's eyes widened. That's not ours. Kramer grabbed it. His face went red. Hennessy said he saw a maintenance man with a work order. Nobody signed. I looked at Nina. Did Mercer request safe inspection? Her lips parted, then closed. Number Kramer's eyes narrowed. Then who did? Nina's breathing had gone shallow. She was either terrified or performing. Wolf would have watched the difference. The way he watches hands around a bottle, I said. Let's talk to Hennessy again. We went down. The lobby guard looked nervous now, because nervousness spreads in buildings when police move through them. Kramer barked. Tell me about the maintenance man. Hennessy licked his lips. Came in around 10. Said he had a work order. Said Mr. Mercer. Requested an after-hours inspection. Something about the wall safe. Kramer shoved the unsigned form toward him. This. Hennessy's eyes widened. That's the one. Looks like it. Did you check it? Kramer demanded. Hennessy's jaw tightened. We don't check signatures, Inspector. We check badges. He had a badge building contractor badge. Name? I asked. Hennessy frowned. I didn't catch it at first. Then I saw the badge. Eddie Sloan. He was polite, quiet, took the service elevator. What did he look like? Kramer snapped. White guy, mid-40s, cap tool bag, Hennessy said. Not tall, not short. Average. Average criminals are the hardest, because average is a disguise. Anyone else with him? I asked. Hennessy hesitated. There was another man suit. Came in a minute later, didn't speak to me, went straight to the elevators like he owned them. What suit man? Kramer asked. Hennessy shook his head. I see suits all day. But this one, he had that look, like he was law. That made my skin prickle, because Mercer had hinted the file named someone close to the law, and now we had a suit who looked like law showing up after hours at Mercer's building. I said, did the suit show a badge? Hennessy swallowed. Number. But he nodded at me, like I should know. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Did you let him pass without asking? Hennessy's face reddened. He looked official. I thought he was with the maintenance man. Kramer made a sound that was half snarl. You thought? Hennessy's eyes dropped. Yes, Inspector. Kramer turned to me. You getting this? I'm getting a headache, I said, but yes, maintenance man after hours with unsigned work order, followed by a suit who looked like law, and then Mercer ends up dead and his safe is open. Kramer's mouth tightened. We'll get the building camera footage. Hennessy flinched. Cameras were down last night. Maintenance. Kramer froze. What? Hennessy swallowed. They said the system was being serviced. We had to rely on the log. Kramer's face went a shade darker. Everybody's cameras are always down when something interesting happens. I said, it's a popular time to be blind. Kramer glared at me, then stalked toward the elevator again. Back up, Nina Dale is coming in for a formal statement now. Nina followed, pale and composed, but her hands trembled slightly at her sides. She was trying hard to look like she had nothing to hide. That kind of effort is always suspicious. In Mercer's office, Kramer started questioning her with the brute force of a man who believes pressure creates truth. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it creates panic. Mercer tell you who he was afraid of? Kramer demanded. Nina swallowed. Number. He mentioned a name, Kramer pressed. Number he say anything about midnight? Kramer snapped. Nina hesitated. What meeting? Kramer asked. Nina's jaw tightened. He said he was going to trade names. The words came out before she could stop them. The room went still. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Trade names. Nina blinked, and I saw the instant regret. Her face tightened and her voice went too quick. I mean, that's not what he said. He said he was going to meet someone. That's all. Too fast, too smooth. Like a line practiced, and then tripped over. I said softly, Nina. She stared at me, eyes wide. Kramer barked. What names? Nina's mouth tightened. I don't know. You just said trade names, Kramer growled. Nina shook her head hard. I misspoke. You did not misspeak, Kramer snapped. You slipped. Nina's breathing quickened. Inspector, please. Kramer leaned in. Who was Mercer going to name? Nina's eyes flicked, and for a moment her composure cracked enough to show fear that was real. Then it snapped back into place. Too neat. I don't know. I watched her, and I thought of Wolf's face when he listens to people. Wolf does not focus on what they say. He focuses on how they change when they say it. I said, Kramer, let her breathe. Kramer glared at me. You defending her? I'm defending information, I said. If you crush it, it won't be useful. Kramer grunted, stepped back a fraction, and Nina inhaled. I said, Nina, Mercer didn't trust anybody, but he trusted you enough to give you the safe combination. He told you something about midnight. Trade names sounds like an exchange. Who was he meeting? Nina swallowed. He wouldn't tell me. He said it was better if I didn't know. Better for whom? I asked. For me, she whispered. That was honest. It was also frightening, Kramer snapped. Where was the meeting? Nina shook her head. I don't know. I looked at her. Was it here? Was it in his car? Was it at Wolf's? Her eyes flicked at the last option, and that flick was a confession without words. I said quietly, he planned to trade names with Wolf. He wanted to talk to Mr. Wolf again. He said Wolf would understand. And now Mercer is dead, I said, and the file is empty. Kramer's jaw clenched. So Wolf was the meeting, I said. Or Wolf was the threat. If Mercer traded names, Wolf would learn who was close to the law. Kramer's eyes went hard, and someone didn't want Wolf to learn. I glanced at the open safe, the empty envelope, and the replaced shredder bag. Someone got here first. I took a slow breath and pictured the scene after hours. Maintenance man with a tool bag and an unsigned work order. A suit who looked like law, no camera footage. Safe open, papers gone. A bag of shreds replaced like a stage prop. That wasn't a random burglary. That was a controlled removal, executed by someone who knew exactly what to take and how to leave an office looking almost normal. I left Mercer's office with Kramer, still grumbling into his notebook, and Nina sitting rigid, hands clenched, and I headed back to the brownstone with my mind full of one ugly detail. A suit who looked like law had walked into Mercer's building after hours. And if Mercer's file was supposed to name someone close to the law, then the suit might not have been an accomplice. He might have been the name Chapter 4. By noon the next day, I had 2 certainties and 1 suspicion, which is not a balanced diet, but it is the kind Wolf feeds on. The certainties were these. Grant Mercer was dead, and something inside that sealed envelope had vanished, without leaving a respectable footprint. The suspicion was that the missing contents were not just papers, but leverage that had changed hands like a hot coin. Whoever had it did not want it opened, copied, shared, or even acknowledged. Wolf had heard my report about Mercer's office with the same expression he wears when he tastes a sauce that is almost right and therefore intolerable. A maintenance man with an unsigned work order, Wolf said, eyes narrowed. A suit who appeared official, cameras disabled, a safe opened without force, an envelope emptied, a shredder bag replaced. It is not robbery, it is sanitation. Nice word for it, I said. They cleaned up. Yes, Wolf replied. And they left a few crumbs because humans are never as neat as they imagine. He had instructed me to remain available, which is Wolf's gentle way of chaining me to the brownstone. He also had me telephone Saul Panzer and request his presence, because Wolf likes having a second set of eyes that do not blink. Saul arrived at 1:30, calm and thin and dependable, wearing his hat as if it were part of his skull. Wolf gave him a glance and nodded, which in Wolf language is a handshake. Saul took the chair near my desk and waited. At 2, Fritz showed in a visitor. The man introduced himself before Fritz could finish the sentence, which is always a small sign of arrogance. "Cole Raskin," he said, and extended a hand toward Wolf, as if Wolf were required to accept it. Wolf did not accept it. He looked at Raskin's hand, the way he might look at a used napkin. "Sit," Wolf said. Cole Raskin sat, but not with Mercer's careful stiffness. Raskin sat with the relaxed confidence of a man who thinks furniture belongs to him if he uses it long enough. He was in his early 50s, hair dark, face smooth, eyes bright and cold. He wore an expensive suit and carried no envelope, no briefcase, no obvious prop. He brought himself, which he presumably considered sufficient. His mouth formed a sympathetic curve. "Mr. Wolf, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Are you?" Raskin's sympathetic curve held. "Grant Mercer and I had our differences, but he was a force. New York will be poorer without him," I said. "Sometimes the city gets richer when a force leaves." Raskin turned his eyes toward me, and they sharpened, then softened again. "You must be Archie Goodwin." "That's what they call me when they're being polite," I said. Raskin nodded, then looked back at Wolf. "I won't take much of your time. I'm here because Grant was killed, and because he was carrying something that could cause more trouble," Wolf said. "You mean the file?" Raskin's smile did not change, but his eyes flicked. "Yes, the file." That was our first useful moment. Raskin had not been told by Kramer, and Mercer's assistant had not been touring Midtown with the news. Yet Raskin knew. That meant the file's existence was already circulating among the people who feared it. Wolf said, "Why does it concern you?" Raskin spread his hands slightly. "Because Grant was reckless. When men like Grant gather secrets, they rarely keep them to themselves. They trade them, they threaten with them. Sometimes they detonate them." Wolf's tone was flat. "You have come to detonate it here." Raskin gave a low chuckle. "Number, I've come to prevent detonation. If there is something dangerous loose, I would prefer it be contained." Wolf's eyes narrowed further. "Contained by you." Raskin's smile tightened. "Contained by someone responsible." Wolf's mouth compressed. "Mr. Raskin, you are a rival financier. I know your name. I know you and Mercer competed for deals and headlines. Do not pretend you have come here out of civic duty." Raskin's eyes cooled a shade. The sympathetic curve faded into something sharper. "Grant was planning to destroy people, Mr. Wolf. Not only himself, he had been recording conversations for months." Saul's gaze lifted slightly. "That was Saul's version of surprise," I said, recording. Raskin nodded. He called it insurance. He enjoyed the phrase. He liked the idea that he could keep powerful men from crushing him by having their voices in a drawer. Wolf's gaze was steady. "How do you know this?" Raskin hesitated a fraction, then said, "Because he hinted to me. He wanted me to know he had something on me too." Grant was not subtle. "Did he have something on you?" Wolf asked. Raskin's smile returned thinner. "If he did, it was not earned. I do not give men that kind of material." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Then your concern is altruistic." Raskin did not blink. "My concern is survival. If Grant recorded men in law enforcement, in the courts, in charity boards, those men may become frantic. Frantic men make mistakes. Mistakes spill into the markets. I dislike volatility." I said, "Your heart bleeds for stability." Raskin looked at me with controlled irritation. "I value order." Wolf's voice was calm, but heavy. "You value profit." Raskin's shoulders lifted slightly, acknowledging it without surrendering. "Profit is not a sin." Wolf's eyes held him. It becomes one when it is fed by corruption. Raskin's jaw tightened. Then he leaned forward, voice lowering. That's why I'm here. If Grant's file contained recordings, or a list of them, or instructions on where to find them, then whoever took it is not just protecting themselves. They are protecting a pipeline. Wolf's eyes sharpened. A pipeline. Raskin nodded once. Payoffs, favors. Donations that are not donations. Decisions that are purchased. I don't know the details, but Grant was circling something. He called it a hidden river, money that moved through charities and contracts and legal decisions without ever looking like money. Wolf sat very still. The word pipeline pleased his mind. I could tell Wolf likes a structure. He likes systems. A pipeline is a system. It has valves, pressure points, and leaks. Raskin continued. If that pipeline exists, the file was not just dirt. It was a map. Wolf's eyes narrowed to slits. And you have come to obtain the map. Raskin's smile turned frank. For the first time, I have come to make sure the map does not land in the wrong hands. Wolf's voice was cold. Such as yours. Raskin's smile held. Such as the newspapers. Such as criminals who do not understand restraint. Such as men who will burn everything to protect themselves. I thought of the suit, who looked like law entering Mercer's building after hours. I thought of cameras being down for maintenance. I thought of a shredder bag that looked like a stage prop. Wolf said, You have contributed speculation. Raskin's eyes tightened. I have contributed warning. Grant was going to trade names at midnight. The words landed with weight. Nina had slipped the phrase to Kramer, then backtracked. Raskin saying it now smoothly meant the idea was already in circulation, or he wanted us to believe it was. Wolf's eyes flicked to me, and then back to Raskin. You are very well informed. Raskin's smile returned to sympathy, as if he were offering condolences again. Grant liked to talk when he was frightened. He was frightened recently. Wolf's tone was mild, but sharp. Then perhaps you were one of the men he frightened. Raskin rose. I won't waste your time further. If you find the contents of that file, Mr. Wolf, be careful. Men do not like their voices held against them. Wolf did not rise. Men who do not like it should behave better. Raskin's eyes flicked toward the orchid room door, then back. Good day. He left. When the front door closed, the brownstone felt calmer, and that told me Raskin's presence had been an irritant even to the furniture. I said, he came in pretending grief, but he asked about the file like he was checking a bank balance. Wolf's eyes stayed narrow. He wanted to know whether the file had been opened. He wanted to measure how much control has shifted. Saul spoke for the first time. You want me to tail him? Wolf nodded once. Yes, immediately. Saul rose, adjusted his hat, and left without another word. Saul does not waste speech on plans. He executes them. I watched Saul go, then looked at Wolf. You believe him about recordings. I believe Mercer recorded, Wolf said. It is a common habit among cowards who wish to feel brave. The question is where the recordings are, and whether they were included in the file or merely referenced by it. And Raskin, I said. Wolf's mouth tightened. Raskin is not the killer. He is a scavenger. The killer is closer to Mercer, closer to the law, and closer to the pipeline he described. I tapped my pen. If Mercer recorded conversations, there should be devices, tapes, storage, something. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Yes, therefore, we will locate Mercer's secondary repository. A man with Mercer's paranoia would not store such items in his office, safe alone. Home, I said. Perhaps, Wolf said, or a rented storage, or a third party. That is why Nina Dale matters. She is either frightened or rehearsed. The phone rang then, I answered. It was Saul. His voice was low and steady. Raskin went to the Barrington Club. Wolf's eyes narrowed further. Who was present? Saul paused a fraction, as if selecting the most important names. Judge Harlan Preece, Police Captain Dugan, and Marjorie Lott, chair of the Kingsbridge Children's Fund. I felt my eyebrows lift. A judge, a police captain, and a charity chair, all gathered with a rival financier in a private club the day after Mercer's death. That was not condolence, that was triage. Saul continued. They were in a private room, cigar smoke, low voices. Raskin asked questions. They did not answer easily. Wolf's gaze fixed on a point in the air above my desk, as if he were arranging those names into a pattern. A judge, a captain, a charity chair, money, authority, respectability, yes, I said. That sounds like a pipeline with legs. Wolf did not look at me. It sounds like fear. Saul's voice remained calm. Raskin left after 20 minutes. He went to his car. He looked around twice before getting in. Wolf spoke, voice heavy. Continue to observe him. If he meets again, report at once. Saul said, yes. He hung up. I looked at Wolf. Private club, private room, 3 pillars of public trust, and Raskin taking notes. Wolf's mouth tightened. The file's contents, or the knowledge of them, have alarmed a circle. That circle includes law and charity, and perhaps the judiciary. This is not a single corrupt man. It is a conduit, I said. Mercer recorded conversations for months. That means he probably has a stash. If the file was a map, it might point to where the recordings are kept. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Exactly, and the killer did not merely remove paper from an envelope. The killer removed direction. He looked at the empty envelope on my desk as if it were a taunt. We will find the recordings, Wolf said. We will find the pipeline, and then we will do what Mercer could not. What's that? I asked. Wolf's voice went colder. We will use truth without becoming blackmailers. That was Wolf at his noblest, which is always dangerous because noble plans attract ugly resistance. The telephone rang again, but this time it was not Saul. I answered. Goodwin. A man's voice, careful and clipped. Mr. Goodwin, you and Mr. Wolf should stop pursuing Mr. Mercer's effects. My grip tightened. Who is this? The voice did not answer. It continued, smooth. You are walking toward people who do not tolerate interference. The file is gone. Let it remain gone. I glanced at Wolf. He was watching me, face heavy, eyes narrowed, listening to my half of the conversation, the way he listens to a confession. I said into the phone, if you're calling to threaten me, you should speak louder. Wolf likes clarity. The voice paused. This is clarity. If you continue, you will lose something you value. The line clicked dead. I stared at the receiver for a moment, then set it down. Wolf's voice was quiet. So, we have touched the pipeline. I swallowed, because the call was not just a warning. It was proof that someone was watching us. And when someone warns you to stop, it usually means you are finally headed in the right direction. Chapter 5. If there is one thing I have learned from watching Inspector Kramer wrestle with a case, it is that he prefers his corpses punctual. He likes death to occur at a time that suits the paperwork. When it does not, he takes it personally. The medical examiner took it professionally, which is worse for Kramer. Kramer called me at 10 the next morning, and his greeting was a grunt that sounded like it had been dragged up from his shoes. Goodwin, he said, you awake? Only because the city insists, I said. Get down to Midtown South, he growled. We got the time of death. Whose? I asked, though I already knew. Mercer, he snapped, and it doesn't match the story. That was enough to get me moving. When the time does not match, the killer usually had time. Time means control. I took a cab, because running is for men who believe they can outrun their luck. At Midtown South, I flashed my identification, smiled at the desk sergeant who hated me, and found Kramer pacing a corridor like a bear with paperwork. He held a sheet in his hand. His scowl deepened when he saw me. Here, he said, shoving it at my chest. I read the relevant line, estimated time of death. Between 6:30 and 7:30 p.m. Mercer's body had been discovered in his town car around 10:30. That's 3 hours, I said. Kramer's nostrils flared. At least, maybe more. Me says, body cooling and stomach contents point earlier than the discovery. So Mercer was dead while everyone thought he was alive, I said. Kramer's eyes narrowed. And while your boss was sitting on his fat chair polishing his principles. I handed the sheet back. That gives the killer hours to stage the scene. That's what I just said. Kramer snapped. It also means Mercer didn't die where they found him, I said. Or if he did, they kept the car somewhere before parking it on 57th. Kramer's mouth tightened. We looked at the route driver's statement. All useless. Mercer's driver swears he dropped Mercer at his building around 6, then took the car to a garage like always. Like always, I repeated. Where's the driver now? Being questioned again, Kramer growled, and sweating like a faucet. You think he's lying, I said. I think everybody's lying, Kramer replied. It's New York. Lying is a commuter habit, I said. If Mercer died by 7:30, he had a meeting between leaving his office and dying. Nina Dale said midnight. But Mercer didn't reach midnight. Kramer's eyes hardened. Or he did. And the clock is the lie. That was Kramer almost thinking. It happens when he is angry enough, I said. Where's Mercer's coat? In evidence, Kramer said. Why? Because men don't keep secrets only in files, I told him. They keep them in pockets. Kramer grunted and led me to the property room. A technician brought out Mercer's coat in a clear bag. It was a good coat, dark wool, tailored. The kind a man wears when he believes the world is his to negotiate. I looked at the pockets through the plastic. Everything had been logged and bagged separately, but there were still shapes visible, a handkerchief, a pen, a card case. May I asked. The technician raised a brow, Kramer said. Let him. If he contaminates it, I'll arrest him for being himself. The technician opened the bag and held the coat. I checked the inside breast pocket first. Card case receipts, a folded sheet of paper that had been catalogued and removed. Then I checked the right coat pocket and felt a stiff rectangle. What's this? I asked. The technician said, ticket, logged. He produced a small paper slip in an evidence sleeve and handed it to Kramer, who handed it to me like it might bite. It was a valet ticket, not from Mercer's usual garage near his office, which I had already learned from Hennessy's building staff. This one was from a place across town, printed in blue ink, with a name and address on it that meant nothing to me. At first glance, Garrison Vehicle Storage, West 19th Street. I looked up. Mercer parked across town. Kramer's scowl deepened. His driver says he never went there. Then the driver is lying, I said. Or the valet ticket is planted. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Why would someone plant a valet ticket? To send us somewhere, I said. Or because they forgot to remove it. He glared. I'm not your muscle. No, I said. You're my badge. That's better. Kramer swore. But he came. If there is one thing about Kramer, it is that he hates being excluded from his own case more than he hates Wolf. We drove down to West 19th. The garage sat between a warehouse and a building that sold expensive furniture to people who did not sit still long enough to enjoy it. The garage entrance was wide and dim, with a fluorescent sign that hummed like a tired insect. Inside, cars sat in rows under dim lights, their polished surfaces reflecting the kind of quiet that only money can buy. A small office sat near the entrance, windowed, with a man behind the counter who looked as if he had been hired for his ability to say no politely. Kramer walked in first. He flashed his badge. The clerk's eyes widened, then tightened into professional caution. Yes, officer. Inspector, Kramer corrected. Kramer homicide. We're looking for a car that came through here last night. The clerk swallowed. We have records. Kramer slapped the valet ticket on the counter. This ticket was in the pocket of Grant Mercer. He was found dead in his town car. According to this, the car was stored here. The clerk's eyes flicked to the ticket, then away, then back. His throat moved. Name, Kramer barked. Reese, the clerk said. Paul Reese. Kramer leaned closer. Did Mercer's car come here? Reese hesitated. We handle a lot of vehicles. Answer, Kramer said. Reese licked his lips. Yes, a town car came in. What time? I asked. Reese glanced at me, then at Kramer's face, and decided I was less likely to arrest him. Around 8. Kramer's eyes narrowed. 8. Mercer was dead by then. Reese's mouth tightened. I don't know about that. That car came in at 8. Kramer repeated slowly. And Mercer's body was discovered after 10. That means the car was somewhere else. Then here, then somewhere else again. Who brought it? Reese's fingers tightened on the counter edge. A driver, name, Kramer demanded. We don't take names, Reese said. We take tickets, I said. But you take money? Reese's eyes flicked. Yes. Kramer's scowl sharpened. Who paid you? Reese swallowed. I can't. Kramer leaned in, voice low and dangerous. You can. Either you tell me now, or you tell a judge after you spend the night regretting your choices. Reese's face went pale. He looked at Kramer, then at the uniformed officer Kramer had brought along, then back at me as if hoping for mercy. I said, Paul, this is not a parking violation. A man is dead. If you helped someone move that car around, you helped a killer. Reese's eyes squeezed shut for a moment. Then he opened them and spoke fast, like ripping off a bandage. A man came in, he said. Not Mercer. Not the usual driver. A suit, said he was handling it for Mr. Mercer. Kramer's jaw clenched. Suit, badge. Reese shook his head. No badge. He had that look, though, like you'd better cooperate. Kramer's nostrils flared. And you did? Reese swallowed. He paid cash. How much? I asked. Reese hesitated. 2,000. Kramer's eyes widened a fraction, then hardened again. 2,000 for parking. Reese's voice dropped. Not for parking. Silence landed. I said quietly. For what? Reese's face tightened. He wanted a swap. Kramer's voice turned rough. A swap of what? Reese swallowed hard. Plates. That word hit the room like a dropped tool. License plates, Reese said quickly, as if saying it faster would make it less criminal. He asked if we had a spare set. We do for storage, for clients who don't want their cars seen. We can put temporary plates on and hold the real ones. It's not legal. Everybody knows that, but people pay. Kramer's eyes were ice. You swapped plates on Mercer's car, Reese nodded. Miserable. Yes. He paid cash. He said it was for privacy. What plates were put on? I asked. Reese's hands trembled as he reached into a drawer and pulled out a logbook. He flipped pages. Here the town car came in under plate number. Then we swapped to a different set. Temporary. We held the original. Kramer snatched the book and stared. His face went darker with each line. I said, Where are the original plates now? Reese pointed to a back cabinet. Locked. Kramer barked to the officer, Get them. The officer went, and Reese sagged slightly, as if the confession had emptied him. I leaned in. Paul, who was the suit? Reese shook his head. I don't know. He didn't give a name. He was polite, but cold. He said if I talked about it, I'd regret it. Kramer growled. You'll regret it anyway. Reese's eyes darted. Am I under arrest? Kramer stared. Not yet. But if you lie again, I'll treat you like you built the knife. The officer returned with a small envelope containing the original plates. Kramer took them like they were evidence and insult in one. Outside the garage, the winter air hit my face and cleared the smell of oil and cowardice. Kramer looked at me. You think this points to your file? It points to staging, I said. If they swapped plates, they moved the car somewhere. They didn't want traced. Mercer could have been killed in a different location. Then the car was driven, cleaned, parked, and finally dropped on 57th for discovery. Kramer's jaw clenched. We'll trace where those plates show up. Toll's cameras. Your cameras, I said, assuming they're not always down for maintenance. Kramer glared. You want to get punched? No, I said. I want to get paid. Back at the brownstone, Wolf listened to my report without moving. Fritz served Wolf beer, and Wolf accepted it. That meant the world had become manageable again. or at least he wanted it to be. When I finished, Wolf said, "So, the time of death is earlier. The car's identity was disguised. The scene was staged." "Yes," I said. "They bought hours with the medical examiner's clock, and they bought anonymity with plates." Wolf's eyes narrowed, "And the purpose of staging is to direct attention to 57th, I said. "To Mercer's usual patterns, away from wherever he actually died." Wolf nodded once. "Exactly," I said. "And the suit who arranged it likely had enough authority to intimidate the garage clerk and enough cash to make him cooperate. He also had enough knowledge to know Mercer's driver and usual garage would raise questions." Wolf's mouth tightened. "A man who understands systems." "Like our private club trio," I said. "Judge Preece, Captain Haynes, Charity Chair Lott, and Raskin sniffing around them." Wolf's eyes narrowed further. "Yes, the pipeline." I leaned on my desk. "Where does Nina fit?" Wolf's gaze held mine. "Nina Dale is either frightened or rehearsed. The staging suggests rehearsed minds. Therefore she is likely rehearsed." "That means she's part of it," I said. Wolf's tone remained flat. "Or she is being used by it. Do not confuse participation with possession. The real possession is fear." I frowned. "Fear of what was in the file?" "Yes," Wolf said. "Or fear of what the file pointed to." "Mercer's blackmail was not the motive, Archie. It was the weapon." I watched him, meaning. Wolf's voice was cold, precise. "Blackmail is not why Mercer died. Blackmail is what made everyone swing first. When men fear exposure, they do not wait. They strike, they preempt, they stage, they burn, they kill." I pictured the unsigned work order, the empty envelope, the replaced shredder bag, the suit who looked like law, and now the swapped plates. It was all movement driven by panic. I said, "So the killer is someone who feared the file more than prison." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Or someone who feared what prison would do to the pipeline." Fritz appeared at the office door, polite but firm. "Mr. Wolf, there is a call for Mr. Goodwin." I took it at my desk, a woman's voice, tight, breathy. "Mr. Goodwin, this is Nina Dale." I straightened. "Nina, where are you?" "At home," she whispered. "I shouldn't have called, but I'm scared." "That's becoming a theme," I said. "Tell me why." Her breath hitched. "They came to my office last night. After you left, someone with a badge. He told me to stop talking about midnight. He told me Mercer's recordings were a fantasy. He told me if I kept repeating it, I would end up like Grant." My grip tightened. "Did you recognize him?" She swallowed. "Number, but he knew my name. He knew my address. He knew the safe combination." My mouth went dry. "Nina, don't stay there. Get out. Come here now," she whispered. "I can't. There's a car outside." I felt the hairs on my neck rise. "Nina, listen to me. Go to your kitchen window. Look down. Tell me what you see." A pause. Then her voice, smaller, a black sedan, 2 men. I glanced at Wolf. He was watching my face, eyes narrowed, already hearing the shape of trouble without the words. I said into the phone, very calmly, "Nina, do exactly what I say. Leave your phone on. Do not hang up. Put on your coat. Walk out your back stairwell if you have one. If you do not, go out the front like you own it and keep walking toward the nearest place with people. A diner, a dealie, a doorman anywhere." Her breath quickened. "They'll see me." "Let them," I said. "Let them see you not afraid enough to freeze. Move." I heard rustling, the faint sound of a door, then a muffled thud like a foot on stairs. Wolf's voice, low from his chair. "Archie." I covered the receiver. "Nina is being watched." Wolf's eyes narrowed to slits. "Then the pipeline has turned its attention to her." I uncovered the receiver. "Nina, keep moving." Her breath came faster. Then there was a sharp sound, like a door opening too quickly. A man's voice in the background, "Miss Dale." Nina gasped. I said, loud, "Nina, run." The line went dead. Chapter 6, when Nina Dale's line went dead. The brownstone seemed to inhale and hold it. I stared at the receiver for a full second, listening to nothing. Then I did what any sensible man does when nothing answers. I swore, softly, to preserve Wolf's peace of mind and Fritz's opinion of my upbringing. Wolf's eyes were narrowed, his face heavy with that particular annoyance that comes when a plan is interrupted by someone else's violence. "Where is she?" he asked. "At home," I said. Or she was. "There's a car outside. 2 men. She tried to leave, and somebody met her in the hall. Then the phone died." Wolf's voice went colder. "Telephone Inspector Kramer now." "I'll do better," I said, already reaching for my hat. "I'll telephone him from the cab so I can arrive while he is still deciding whether to be competent." Wolf did not like that. He also knew it was correct. "Archie," he said. "Yes?" "Do not be killed," Wolf said. "I'll try to disappoint you," I told him, and ran for the door. New York at dusk has a special talent for pretending nothing is urgent. The traffic crawls, the lights blink patiently, and people in good coats step around panic as if it were a puddle. I got a cab and gave the driver Nina's address, then called Kramer. He answered on the second ring, which meant he was already annoyed enough to stay awake. "Goodwin," he growled. "What now?" "Nina Dale," I said. 2 men outside her place. She tried to leave. Someone met her. Then her phone went dead. "Send a car, or bring your own bulk," Kramer swore. "I got a car on it. Stay put." "I am not a lamp," I said. "I'm on the way." "You're a pain," he snapped. "That's why you keep me," I said, and hung up. By the time I reached Nina's building, the street had that thin sheen of cold that makes every shadow look sharper. There was a black sedan at the curb, engine idling, and inside it 2 men sat with the posture of patience. They were not reading, they were not talking, they were waiting. The cab pulled up half a block away. I paid and walked, hands in my coat pockets, trying to look like a man returning home to a warm dinner, instead of a possible beating. The sedan's driver glanced at me, then away. The passenger glanced, held a fraction longer, then looked down. That was enough. They had noticed me, and they had decided whether I mattered. Men like that always decide quickly. I went into the building lobby. A doorman stood behind the desk, eyes tired, face blank. "I'm looking for Miss Dale," I said. His gaze sharpened slightly. "Police were here." "Not enough," I said. "Did she come down?" He shook his head. "Number 2 men went up a few minutes ago. Not police, I think." "Which apartment?" I asked. He hesitated, then said, 16C. I did not wait for permission. I went to the elevator, punched the button, and rode up with my heart, doing small, rude jumps. On the 16th floor, the corridor was quiet. Nina's door was at the end, and the first thing I saw was that it was cracked open. The second thing I saw was the fresh gouge in the wood. "Return it." The letters were carved, not written, deep enough to splinter the varnish. They looked angry and careful at the same time, which is a nasty combination. I knocked once, gently. "Nina, it's Archie Goodwin." No answer. I pushed the door open the rest of the way and stepped inside. Nina was on the living room floor near the sofa, not unconscious but stunned, one hand pressed to the side of her head. Her hair had come loose, her face was pale, and her eyes were wide with the kind of fear that does not fade, just because you survive it. I crouched. "Nina." She blinked at me as if checking whether I was real. Then she swallowed and whispered, "They came in." "Who?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. Her voice shook. 2 men. One stayed by the door. The other asked me where it was. He kept saying, return it," like I had stolen something. I glanced at the carved letters. "They got artistic," she swallowed. "They didn't take anything, not money, not jewelry, nothing. They just wanted me to be afraid." "That worked," I said, her eyes filled. "They said Mr. Wolf has it. They said he needs to give it back. They said if I was smart, I'd convince you to return it." I felt my stomach tighten. Return what? She shook her head. "They didn't say They just said it, like everyone knows what it is. The file, I said. Nina's breathing hitched. Yes, the file, or what was in it, or what it led to. I don't know. I only know they're not going to stop. I heard footsteps in the hall, heavy and fast. Then Kramer's voice, barking. Police. I stood and went to the door. Kramer came in with 2 uniforms, face thunderous. He saw Nina on the floor, and the carved words and his scowl turned into something uglier. This is what I hate, he said, voice rough. Cowards who don't steal, they just scare. Nina looked up at him. They asked for it. Kramer glared at me. Wolf still got that file. He's got an empty envelope. I said, if you want to arrest stationery, go ahead. Kramer swore and turned to one of the uniforms. Get a statement, get her checked out, and get a unit outside. Now, then he looked at me again, eyes narrowed. You're bringing her to Wolf. I wasn't planning to leave her here with a sign on her door, I said. Kramer's jaw clenched. There's something else you need to know. I waited. He said it like it tasted bad. That captain at the club soul-tailed. It wasn't Haynes. I frowned. Then who? Captain Dugan, Kramer growled. The name sat there like a brick, not because I knew Dugan personally, but because a police captain who drinks cigars with a judge in a charity chair has too many ways to make trouble. And, I said, why do I feel like that matters now? Kramer's eyes went hard. Because Dugan is suddenly advising the investigation. Nina's eyes flicked. Advising. Kramer snorted. Yeah, advising, showing up at my squad room with concern, telling me which leads are worth time, which witnesses are reliable, what to prioritize, like he's doing me a favor. And you love favors, I said. Kramer's mouth tightened. I love cases that don't get hijacked. I nodded slowly. So Dugan has inserted himself, and meanwhile witnesses are being leaned on. Kramer stared at me. You seen it, I've smelled it, I said. There's a difference. Kramer pointed a finger at me. His men have been talking to people before my men do. They show up with smiles and friendly warnings. They steer stories. They prune timelines. Prune, I said. Nice word. Sounds like Wolf, Kramer growled. Don't get cute, I said. How bad is it? Kramer's face tightened. Bad enough that Mercer's driver suddenly remembers nothing. Bad enough that the garage clerk is thinking of leaving town. Bad enough that the building guard is rewriting his log. Bad enough that the medical examiner's office got a call asking if they were sure about the time of death. Nina whispered, They can do that. Kramer's voice was bitter. People can do anything when they think they're untouchable. I looked at the carved door again. Return it. The same phrase on Nina's warning now in wood. Whoever wanted the file back did not want only paper. They wanted control returned to them. They wanted the world to go back to behaving, I said. If Dugan is involved, then Mercer's hint about someone close to the law was not a bluff. Kramer's eyes narrowed. Or it was, and Dugan's using it to protect something else. Which is the pipeline, I said. Kramer did not like the word pipeline. It sounded too neat, too much like Wolf. Whatever it is, he snapped. It's big enough to make a captain nervous. Nina's voice shook. Grant said powerful men swing first. I looked down at her. Grant was right. He just wasn't fast enough. Kramer said, Get her up. We're moving her. She's not staying here. Nina rose with my help, unsteady but determined. She kept glancing at the door, at the carved letters, like she wanted to punch them. In the elevator down, she whispered. I didn't take anything. I know, I said. But they think I did, she said. They think you know where it went, I said. That's close enough. Outside, the black sedan was gone. Either they had been spooked by police sirens, or they had decided their message had been delivered. Both were unpleasant. We got Nina into a police car, and I followed in a cab back to the brownstone, because Kramer was not about to let me babysit without his supervision. At the brownstone, Fritz's face tightened when he saw Nina's bruised cheek and shaky posture. Fritz does not like violence in his house. It interferes with digestion. He ushered Nina into the front room, and I heard him murmur something about tea and soup, as if broth could repair fear. Sometimes it can. Wolf waited in his office. He had been listening to my call with Kramer because Wolf hears things even when he is silent. He looked at Nina, took in the bruise, the tremor, and the fierceness behind her eyes. "You have been attacked," Wolf said. Nina nodded. "They wanted me to return it." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "The file." "Yes," Nina whispered. Kramer barged in behind me, loud as ever, and glared at Wolf. "You got a mess on your hands." Wolf's voice was flat. "Inspector, I always have a mess on my hands. That is why you come here." Kramer's face reddened. "Captain Dugan is sticking his nose in my case." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Captain Dugan." "Yes," Kramer snapped. "He's advising, he's steering, he's leaning on people. He's doing it with a smile." Wolf leaned back in his chair, heavy and calm. Then Mercer's hint was not merely theatrical, it was direction. Kramer growled. "You want to accuse a police captain?" Wolf's tone remained mild. "I want to observe a police captain. Accusations require proof. Observation requires only intelligence." Kramer stared at him. "You think Dugan took the file?" "I think Dugan fears the file," Wolf replied. "That is not the same. Fear produces many behaviors. Theft is one of them." Kramer grunted. "My men caught Dugan's men in witness rooms." Wolf's eyes narrowed further. "You permit it." Kramer's face hardened. "I can't start a war in the department without proof." Wolf nodded once. "Exactly. Therefore, we will acquire proof." He looked at me. "Archie, you will protect Miss Dale," Kramer barked. "That's my job." Wolf's gaze turned cold. "Your job is to shout. Archie's job is to notice." Kramer's jaw clenched, but he did not deny it. "He knows what he is." Wolf continued. "You will also bait the thief." I blinked. "How?" Wolf's eyes narrowed. "By implying that I still possess the file. Not the envelope, the contents." Kramer snapped. "That's crazy." Wolf's voice was flat. "It is effective." Nina's eyes widened. "But if they think you have it, they'll come here." "Yes," Wolf said. "And then they will behave in a manner useful to us." Kramer glared. "You're setting a trap in your house." Wolf's mouth tightened. "This house has hosted many traps. Inspector, you have been caught in several." Kramer swore under his breath. I said, "How do we imply it?" Wolf's gaze held mine. "You will speak to Cole Raskin. You will speak to Captain Dugan if possible. You will let it be suggested that Mercer's file contained recordings and that I have secured copies." Kramer's head snapped up. "Copies? That's a lie." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "It is a lure." I considered it. If Dugan's men are already pruning timelines, that means they're scared. If they believe Wolf has recordings, they might try to take them or destroy them. Wolf nodded once. "Precisely. And in doing so, they will reveal access, methods, and perhaps the location of the originals." Nina swallowed. "Grant said he had recordings. He said it was his insurance." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Then the recordings may exist, even if the file is empty." Kramer growled. "This is going to get someone killed." Wolf's tone was calm, almost bored. "It will get someone exposed. That is preferable." I looked at Nina. "You okay being bait again?" Her jaw set. "I'm done being scared." Wolf's gaze softened by a fraction. "Courage is not the absence of fear, Miss Dale. It is the decision that fear will not command you." Nina nodded slowly. Kramer pointed a finger at Wolf. "If anything happens to her, it's on you." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Inspector, everything that happens is on someone. It is rarely me." Kramer sputtered, then turned and stomped out, because leaving is the only way he knows to avoid admitting he cannot control what's coming. When the door closed, Wolf looked at me. "Archie." "Yes." "You will begin with Raskin," Wolf said. "He is eager. Eagerness makes men careless." "And Dugan," I said. Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Dugan will come to you if he believes you hold the thing he fears." I nodded, feeling the case tighten like a knot. Nina sat in the front room now, with Fritz's soup, hands wrapped around the bowl, as if warmth could anchor her. Through the window, the streetlights flickered on, and New York looked as normal as it ever pretends to be. Inside, Wolf had decided to lie loudly enough that the right people would hear it, and I knew, with the ugly certainty of experience, that when you bait a thief with power, you do not catch only the thief. You catch whoever has been living off the power long enough to believe they deserve it. Chapter 7. When Nero Wolfe decides to invite danger to dinner, he does it with the same care he uses selecting orchids. He is particular about the arrangements, he insists on proper nourishment, and he expects the guests to wilt under pressure. Fritz took the news of a dinner party with his usual composure, which is to say he looked as if the devil had requested a second helping, and he intended to serve it with grace. He never complains aloud. He simply cooks harder, as if excellence is his defense against unpleasant company. By 6:30 the brownstone smelled like butter, herbs, and civilization. The front room lamps were lit, the silver was laid out, and Wolfe had worn his best suit, which always makes him look like a wealthy judge who has never forgiven the world for being noisy. Nina Dale sat in the front room, pale but steady. The bruise on her cheek, disguised by powder Fritz, had obtained from somewhere that would have surprised me. She held herself upright, chin high, as if she were determined not to be reduced to a victim again. Wolfe had instructed her not to speak unless asked, and not to cry unless necessary. I added a third instruction quietly. If Captain Dugan so much as breathed too close, she should kick him in the shin. Nina did not smile, but her eyes warmed a fraction. At 7, the guests arrived. Cole Raskin came first, punctual, coat perfect, expression balanced between condolences and calculation. He glanced at Nina with a flash of something like satisfaction, then at Wolfe with the smooth smile of a man who thinks he can buy any room if he stands in it long enough. "I appreciate your invitation," Raskin said. "You may not later," Wolfe replied, "and let Fritz take his coat." Raskin's smile held, but his eyes tightened. He sat where I indicated, in the red leather chair, and folded his hands like a man ready to sign something. Hal Bristow arrived next. He was Mercer's lawyer, which meant he wore caution the way other men wear hats, middle-aged, neat, thin, lipped, eyes that measured every object for liability. He carried a briefcase that looked heavy enough to contain a small court. He shook my hand with a grip that was neither friendly nor hostile, just professional. "Mr. Goodwin." "Mr. Bristow," I said. "Try not to sue the furniture." He did not smile. He looked at Wolfe and said, "Mr. Wolfe." Wolfe nodded once. "Sit." Bristow sat on the yellow chair, briefcase at his feet, posture straight, expression neutral. He looked like a man who had spent years telling other men what they could not do, and had enjoyed it. Captain Dugan arrived last, and he did not merely enter. He took possession. He was a big man, not in height, but in bulk, with shoulders that filled the doorway and a face that had learned to show authority without effort. His eyes were a steady gray, the kind that look at you and decide whether you are worth the paperwork. He wore a dark coat and a hat that he removed only because Fritz stood there expecting it. "Mr. Wolfe," Dugan said, voice deep and controlled. Not loud like Kramer, but heavier, as if he did not need volume to be heard. "Captain Dugan," Wolfe replied, equally controlled. "Your presence is educational." Dugan's mouth tightened faintly. "I was told you had information relevant to a homicide investigation." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You were told correctly. Sit." Dugan sat on the couch, which always looks as if it resents holding law enforcement. When Fritz announced dinner, Wolfe rose and moved with the dignity of a man carrying a verdict. We filed into the dining room, where Fritz had arranged food as if he were defending the honor of the house against vulgarity. I served as master of ceremonies, seating them so that no one had easy escape, and everyone had to look at someone they disliked. Wolfe sat at the head, of course, and I sat at my usual place, ready to eat and listen. For the first course, conversation remained polite in the way that men are polite when they have knives at the table and fear in their pockets. Raskin said a few words about Mercer's legacy. Bristow murmured about tragedy. Dugan said nothing, which was his most revealing habit. Nina kept her eyes on her plate and her hands steady. Wolf ate with careful appreciation, as if the food were the only honest thing in the room. After the second course, Wolf set down his fork and dabbed his mouth. That was the signal. When Wolf pauses mid-meal, it is not because he has lost his appetite. It is because he intends to alter someone else's. Mr. Mercer attempted to hire me, Wolf said, voice calm. He offered payment not in currency but in blackmail. Raskin's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. Bristow's eyes sharpened slightly. Dugan's gaze did not change, but the air around him tightened. Nina's breath caught. Wolf continued. I refused blackmail as currency, Mercer persisted. That night he was killed. The file he carried vanished. Raskin said smoothly, We all know that much. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Indeed, but you do not know what Mercer intended with his blackmail. He intended to trade names. He intended to exchange protection for exposure. Bristow's fingers tightened on his glass. Dugan spoke for the first time, voice deep. You're repeating rumor. Wolf regarded him. Rumor is what you call truth when it is inconvenient. Dugan's eyes hardened. Wolf lifted a hand slightly, as if smoothing the air. The file is now secured. The lie sat on the table among the silver and crystal like a loaded pistol, disguised as a napkin. Raskin's eyes lit, hungry. Bristow's expression tightened a fraction, as if he had just heard a clause he disliked. Dugan's shoulders seemed to expand, the way they do when a man decides he has found the center of the problem. Dugan said, Secured where? Wolf's tone remained mild, in a place inaccessible to those who would misuse it. Raskin leaned forward, smile bright. Mr. Wolf, if you have secured evidence that could destabilize the city, I hope you understand the danger. There are ways to resolve this quietly. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Quiet resolutions are often corrupt ones. Raskin spread his hands. Not necessarily. Sometimes they are practical. If this file contains damaging material, it could ruin people, some of whom do not deserve ruin. I said, That's generous of you. Raskin ignored me. Mr. Wolf, name your fee, a generous fee. You have done your work. You can hand over the material to the appropriate authorities, or to someone who can ensure it does not cause unnecessary harm. Wolf looked at him as if he were examining a bad mushroom. You are offering me money to purchase silence. Raskin's smile did not waver. I am offering you compensation for discretion. Wolf's voice was cold. Discretion is what criminals call cowardice. Raskin's eyes tightened. You are making this personal. Wolf's gaze held. It is always personal when men attempt to purchase virtue. Dugan's voice cut in, heavier. Enough, Wolf. You're obstructing an investigation. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Am I, Inspector Kramer, has not accused me of obstruction. He has accused me of being irritating. There is a difference. Dugan's jaw tightened. Kramer is not handling this anymore. That landed. Nina's head lifted slightly. Raskin's eyes flicked. Bristow's mouth tightened. Wolf's gaze sharpened. Captain Dugan, you have inserted yourself into the investigation. Dugan's voice was controlled, but the edge showed. I'm advising. This case touches sensitive people. It needs careful handling, Wolf said. Careful handling is your euphemism for suppression. Dugan's eyes went hard. Watch your mouth. Wolf's voice stayed calm. Captain, you are in my house. You will not threaten me. Dugan leaned forward, and the room seemed to shrink around him. You don't understand. If you have that file, you are holding something that can burn careers, reputations, and the public's faith in institutions. You release it, you cause panic. You sit on it, you become an accessory. Either way, you lose. Wolf regarded him with cold interest. You speak as if you have personal knowledge of what the file contains. Dugan's mouth tightened. I speak as a man who knows what happens when garbage is thrown into the street, Wolf said. You mean when garbage is exposed? Dugan's gaze flicked toward Nina, and Nina flinched. That was not an accident. It was a message delivered with eyes. Bristow spoke then, quiet, smooth. Mr. Wolf, Perhaps there is a middle course. Wolf turned his gaze to him. Mr. Bristow, you have been silent. Now you speak. Bristow folded his hands, voice careful. I represent Mercer's estate. If Mercer left material that could implicate public officials, the estate has obligations, legal obligations. We can arrange a controlled disclosure, limited proper channels. In exchange, the estate can compensate you and ensure your cooperation is recognized, I said. That sounds like a deal. Bristow's eyes flicked to me. It is a deal. Wolf's mouth tightened. You mean you want to trade my silence for your management? Wolf's eyes narrowed. You all claim to fear chaos, yet you create it by preserving corruption. Raskin leaned back, smile fading. Wolf, be reasonable. Dugan's voice lowered. Wolf, this is your last warning. The room held its breath. Wolf did not. Wolf never does. He dabbed his mouth again calmly, as if threats were crumbs. Captain Dugan, your warning is noted. Mr. Raskin, your offer is vulgar. Mr. Bristow, your proposal is self-serving. You are here because you fear Mercer's blackmail, and you fear what it reveals. That fear makes you predictable. Dugan's eyes narrowed. What are you doing? Wolf's gaze was steady. I am watching you. Dinner ended with coffee that none of them enjoyed. Fritz served it with the dignity of a man who would rather serve poison if it meant the guests would leave sooner. They left soon enough. Raskin departed with a smile that had sharpened into irritation. Dugan left without shaking hands, his eyes cold, his mouth set. Bristow left quietly. Briefcase in hand, gazed down, as if he had already begun composing legal language to protect himself. Nina remained seated in the front room, hands clasped, face pale. When the door closed behind the last guest, she exhaled shakily. Wolf returned to his office and sat, heavy and calm. You observed, I said. Yes, Wolf replied. They are all afraid. Raskin is afraid of instability. Dugan is afraid of exposure. Bristow is afraid of liability. And Nina, I said, glancing toward the front room. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Nina is afraid of what she knows she has done. I frowned. Done, Wolf did not elaborate. He rarely does until the moment is ripe. I went to the hall closet where coats had been hung, because I have a habit of checking things after unpleasant people leave. It is not paranoia if it keeps you alive. Bristow's coat was gone. Raskin's coat was gone. Dugan's coat was gone. Only Nina's remained, and she was still here. Then my eye caught Bristow's briefcase. It had been heavy when he arrived. I had noticed because it made a slight thud when he set it down by his chair in the front room before dinner. After dinner, he carried it out in his right hand without strain, as if it had become less burdensome. That is not something I usually track about lawyers, but this case had trained me to notice when weight changes. I walked to my desk, took my scale from the drawer, the little postal scale I use for packages when Wolf's bills arrive, and I want to pretend I have control. Then I went to the front room and looked at Nina. Her eyes were heavy, not with sleep, but with something dragging her down from the inside guilt. If it had a face, would look like that. Nina, I said gently. She looked up, startled. Yes. Did you notice anything odd tonight? I asked. Her mouth tightened. Everything was odd. Besides that, I said. She hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward the hall, then back. Hal kept looking at me. Bristow, I said. She nodded slowly. He kept looking like he wanted to say something and couldn't. I said, Did he speak to you privately? Her eyes widened, and that widening was the answer. Then she swallowed. He asked me if I had kept anything. I kept my voice steady. And Nina's lips trembled. I told him no. I nodded slowly. Was that true? Her eyes dropped. I don't know what I should do. That was not an answer, but it was enough. I left her there with Fritz's tea and went into the office. Wolf looked at me. Well, Bristow's briefcase was lighter when he left, I said, and Nina's eyes are heavier. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Meaning? Meaning Bristow may have taken something out of this house, I said. And Nina is hiding something she thinks will kill her if it's found. Wolf leaned back, heavy and calm, and his voice went colder. Then the bait has succeeded. The fish have bitten, and one has stolen the hook. I stared at him. What do you want me to do? Wolf's gaze was steady. You will search this house, quietly, thoroughly. Bristow has removed something. We will discover what. Nina has withheld something. We will discover that too, and then we will proceed to the final stage. I looked toward the front room where Nina sat alone, shoulders tight, eyes dark with fear. If Wolf was right, she wasn't just a witness. She was a compartment, and something dangerous was hidden inside. Chapter 8. There are two kinds of breaking and entering in New York. One involves crowbars and bad footwear. The other involves smiles, timing, and letting a man open his own door because he believes he is in control. I have always preferred the second. It makes less noise, and it is harder to prosecute. The morning after Wolf's dinner party, the brownstone was quiet in the way it gets quiet after a storm. Fritz moved like a man restoring order with every plate he washed. Nina Dale had slept in the south bedroom upstairs, guarded by the simple fact that Wolf's house is harder to enter than most banks if Wolf decides it is. I had slept in a chair in the front room because Wolf had ordered it, and because I was not going to argue with a man who thinks comfort is a moral weakness. Wolf called me into the office at 9. He was in his chair, beer nowhere in sight, which meant the day promised to be unpleasant. Nina Dale is hiding something, Wolf said without preamble. That's a safe bet, I replied. She's been hiding from knives and men with badges. It becomes a habit. Wolf's eyes narrowed. She is hiding more than fear. Last night, when Captain Dugan glanced at her, she reacted as if he had touched her. That suggests a prior arrangement. Or prior intimidation, I said. Wolf's gaze held. Perhaps, but her guilt is not merely emotional. It is practical. I leaned on my desk, and Bristow's briefcase. Wolf nodded once. It was lighter. So he took something, I said. He believes he took something useful, Wolf corrected. If he took nothing, he would not have bothered. I nodded. All right, how do we break into a lawyer's office without becoming a news item? Wolf's voice was calm. We do it the legal way. We catch him in a lie and make him unlock the truth. That was Wolf's favorite method. He hates locks. He prefers people. Where do I start? I asked. Wolf's eyes narrowed. With his lies, Hal Bristow came here claiming to want controlled disclosure for the estate. Yet he attempted to remove something from my house. That is not control. That is theft disguised as prudence, I said. So I go see him. You will not go as a burglar, Wolf said. You will go as the man who knows. You will tell him you have already spoken to Inspector Kramer about his actions last night. That's a lie, I said. Wolf's gaze was steady. Yes, it is also pressure. I nodded slowly. And pressure makes lawyers open doors. Precisely, Wolf said. He paused, then added, Take Saul Panzer with you. Saul doesn't break into offices, I said. Saul observes exits, Wolf replied. And if Bristow attempts to flee, Saul will discourage him. That sounds like breaking into him, I said. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Do not be lyrical. Go. Saul met me on the street, calm, thin, hat on, eyes steady. He carried no visible weapon because Saul is the kind of man who does not need to show one. We took a cab to Bristow's office on Madison, in a building that smelled like paper and self-importance. Lawyers love buildings that echo. It makes their footsteps sound like authority. Bristow's receptionist eyed me suspiciously until I gave her my best honest smile, which is an unnerving thing. I need to see Mr. Bristow, I said. Now. She opened her mouth to refuse, then saw Saul and decided it might be safer to ask first. She disappeared into the inner office and returned a moment later with the reluctant look of someone who has been told to allow trouble to enter. He'll see you, she said. Bristow's office was clean in the way lawyers keep offices clean, not tidy but arranged so that nothing can be found quickly without permission. He rose when I entered, expression neutral, eyes measuring. Mr. Goodwin, he said, this is unexpected. I have that effect, I said, and sat without being invited. Saul remained standing near the door, quiet as a coat rack with opinions. Bristow's gaze flicked to Saul, then back. What can I do for you? I leaned forward slightly. You can tell me what you took out of Wolf's house last night. His expression did not change, but his fingers tightened on the edge of his desk. I took nothing. That's your first lie today, I said. His eyes cooled. I assure you, I took nothing. That's the same lie, in a different suit, I replied. Your briefcase was heavier when you arrived. It was lighter when you left, I noticed. Bristow's mouth tightened. You are making an accusation. I'm making an observation, I said. Wolf taught me the difference. Bristow's gaze sharpened. If you believe I took something, you should speak to the police. I did, I lied. His eyes narrowed. There it was. The smallest flicker, a tightening at the corner of his mouth. Not fear of Kramer, fear of the department, fear of who might hear. Kramer, Bristow repeated, voice steady. Kramer, I agreed. He's very interested in anyone who removes material evidence from a homicide. Related gathering, he asked me to tell you hello. Bristow stared at me for a long moment. Then he exhaled slowly and leaned back, as if deciding which version of truth would cost him the least. You have no proof, he said. I have a lawyer's weakness, I replied. You like control. You don't like unknowns. Right now, you don't know what Wolf knows, what Kramer knows, or what Dugan knows. That makes you itch. Bristow's eyes hardened at the last name. Captain Dugan is not relevant. That's your second lie, I said. Saul shifted slightly at the door, still silent. But his presence filled the room. Bristow glanced at him again, and I could see the calculation. Bristow was used to dealing with men who threatened him with lawsuits, not men who threatened him with silence. I said, "Open your briefcase." Bristow's jaw tightened. Number, I nodded. Then I leave, and Saul stays. Saul did not move. He merely looked at Bristow with polite patience. Bristow swallowed. This is ridiculous. It's also efficient, I said. Bristow hesitated, then reached down and placed his briefcase on the desk. He snapped the latches with irritated precision and opened it. Inside were files, neatly arranged, a legal pad, a pen case, and tucked into the side pocket, a heavy sealed envelope. My stomach tightened. It was identical in style to Mercer's heavy paper, string tie, wax seal, an M stamp inside a circle. Bristow's eyes flicked up at me, then away. He had been caught with the truth sitting in his briefcase like a loaded document. That, I said softly, is not your stationery. Bristow's mouth tightened. Number. So you did take something, I said. He exhaled slowly. Yes, why? I asked. Bristow's eyes were tired now. The neutral lawyer mask had slipped a fraction. Because I knew you would not protect it the way it needs to be protected. I laughed once without humor. Protected from whom? The public. From men who will kill for it, he snapped. I leaned forward. Open it. Bristow's eyes hardened. I will not. Then explain, I said. Now. Bristow hesitated, then spoke in the careful cadence of a man reciting facts he wishes were not facts. Mercer had 2 files, he said. 2 versions. One was the public threat, the one he waved at people, the one he let them know existed, so they would fear him. And the other, I said. Bristow swallowed. The private guarantee. Saul's gaze sharpened slightly. That was Saul's version of interest. I said, what's in it? Bristow's mouth tightened. Names, specific names, judges, captains, assistant district attorneys, men who have touched Mercer's business, Mercer's cases, Mercer's rivals. It is not general dirt. It is a network, a pipeline, I murmured. Bristow's eyes flicked. Yes, a pipeline, payoffs, disguised as legal fees, charitable contributions, consulting arrangements. Mercer tracked it. He recorded conversations. He copied docket notes. He collected evidence like a man collecting ammunition. And he planned to trade names at midnight, I said. Bristow hesitated, then nodded. Yes, with Wolf, I said. Bristow's jaw tightened. He wanted to force Wolf to become his guarantor. If Wolf had the private file, Mercer believed no one would dare kill him. Wolf would be insurance. I felt cold irritation. Mercer wanted to use Wolf as a shield. Yes, Bristow said quietly. And instead he's dead, I said. Bristow's eyes went flat because someone stole the guarantee. Someone removed the contents before Mercer could deliver it. And then they killed him anyway, because they could. I stared at the sealed envelope in his briefcase. So the envelope Wolf received was the public threat, a decoy. Bristow shook his head. Number the one Wolf received was supposed to be the private file. Mercer carried it. He did not let it leave his hand. Nina saw it. He was obsessive. Yet it arrived empty, I said. Bristow nodded slowly. Which means someone accessed it without breaking the seal, or swapped it with an empty shell. There were 2 envelopes. Mercer kept duplicates to confuse anyone who tried to steal. He believed he was clever. He was, I said, until someone was cleverer. Bristow's eyes held mine. The private file I have here is a copy. Mercer gave it to me weeks ago, sealed, as a legal safeguard. He told me if anything happened to him, I was to keep it safe, and use it only if necessary. And you decided it was necessary, I said. I decided it was dangerous, Bristow replied. I nodded slowly. So you took it from Wolf's house? Yes, Bristow said, because once Captain Dugan was here, I knew this was not contained. It was exposed. I let that sit for a second. Does the private file name Dugan? Bristow's mouth tightened. Yes, I exhaled. Does it name Judge Priest? Yes, Bristow said. Does it name Captain Dugan's advising as obstruction? I said. It names him receiving money, Bristow replied. More than once. That was enough to make my teeth ache, I said. What about Nina? Bristow hesitated. His eyes flicked down. Nina was involved in the recording process. She helped Mercer catalog his recordings. She knew there were 2 files. I felt anger flare. So her guilt is real. Bristow nodded. She did it out of fear and loyalty. Mercer told her it was protection. He told her it was necessary. Mercer had a talent for persuading people to become his tools, I said. Bristow's eyes were tired. Yes. I leaned back. All right. Here's what happens. You're coming to Wolf's house, with that envelope sealed, intact. You will hand it to Wolf, and Wolf will decide how to use it. Bristow's eyes widened slightly. If Wolf opens it, there will be war. I smiled thinly. There's already war, we just haven't named the generals. Bristow's jaw tightened. I can't. You can, I said. You're a lawyer. You live for risk. You just bill it by the hour. Saul spoke quiet. For the first time. You come with us, Mr. Bristow. Bristow looked at Saul, then at me, and knew he had reached the end of polite refusal. All right, he said. Voice flat. But if this gets me disbarred, I will haunt you. I'll send you a bill for the haunting, I said. On the way out, my phone rang. I answered without slowing. Goodwin, I said. Wolf's voice came on the line, calm and steady. I have news, he said. Wolf likes coordination. Raskin met a man in a diner, Wolf said. Not business, not polite. The man had the look. What look? I asked. The kind who waits for orders. Wolf replied. Raskin spoke to him for 5 minutes. Then Raskin's phone rang. He listened. His face changed. He ended the meeting, paid the check, and left. The other man stayed, angry. I felt my stomach tighten. Raskin called it off after 1 phone call. Yes, Wolf said. He left quickly. He looked relieved. Who called? I asked. Saul didn't see. Wolf relayed, but it mattered. I hung up and looked at Bristow in the elevator. Bristow clutched his briefcase as if it were suddenly radioactive. When we reached the brownstone, Wolf was in his office. Waiting, heavy face composed, eyes narrowed. Bristow handed Wolf the sealed envelope without sitting. He looked like a man delivering evidence to a judge who might sentence him. Wolf regarded it without touching it, then looked at Bristow. "You removed this from my house last night." Bristow's mouth tightened. "Yes." Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Why?" Bristow said. "Because Mercer had 2 files." Wolf's gaze sharpened. "Explain," Bristow explained. "Public threat, private guarantee. Names in courts and precincts, money disguised as fees. Recordings Nina's involvement." Wolf listened without moving, except for one small tightening around his eyes when Bristow said Captain Dugan's name. When Bristow finished, Wolf spoke quietly. "So Mercer's blackmail was not a single weapon, it was an arsenal." "Yes," Bristow said. Wolf's gaze shifted to me. "And Saul has reported that Raskin met a killer and then retreated after one call." I nodded. "Yes." Wolf leaned back, heavy and calm. "Then Raskin is not the mastermind. He is a man who considered violence and was reminded of the boundaries." "Reminded by whom?" I asked. Wolf's eyes narrowed to slits. "By the man most protected." Bristow swallowed. "Captain Dugan." Wolf's voice was cold. "Perhaps, or Judge Priest, or the charity chair. The most protected is the one who believes he can cancel murder with a phone call." I thought of Raskin's sudden relief. I thought of men in private rooms with cigars and fear. I thought of Nina's door carved with "Return it," like a ritual demand. I said, "So the killer isn't the angriest man." Wolf's gaze held mine. "No, Archie. The killer is the most protected." Bristow's voice was tight. "If you open that envelope, you'll burn the city." Wolf regarded him with cold patience. "Mr. Bristow, cities burn daily. They simply call it progress. What we will do is expose the arsonists." He looked at me. "Prepare for the final gathering. Archie, invite Captain Dugan. Invite Judge Priest. Invite Marjorie Lott. Invite Cole Raskin. Invite Inspector Kramer. They will come." "And if they don't?" I said. Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Then we will go to them, but they will come because they believe they can control this house as they control everything else." He paused, gaze fixed on the sealed envelope, like it had insulted him by existing. "And now," Wolf said softly, "we will remove their protection." Chapter 9. If you want to see how a man truly ranks his loyalties, do not watch him at a ribbon cutting or a funeral. Watch him when Fear walks into the room and asks for a chair. Wolf did not ask Fear to sit. He announced, in a voice calm enough to insult every nervous system in Manhattan, that Fear would be served breakfast and then turned over to the district attorney. He did it at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, when respectable people pretend the day is still under control. He had me place a call, not to Inspector Kramer, but to a clerk in the district attorney's office Wolf had used before. Wolf asked for the assistant district attorney on duty, and when Wolf's name was repeated down the line like a rumor being verified, he spoke with the measured tone of a man ordering groceries. "I will deliver to the district attorney's office at dawn tomorrow," Wolf said. "A sealed file containing evidence of bribery and corruption involving courts and the police. Unless before that time, the killer of Grant Mercer confesses and surrenders." He let that hang, then added, "You may inform whomever you deem appropriate." "Good day." He hung up and looked at me. "Now," he said. I stared at him. "Now what?" "Now we wait," Wolf replied, "and observe who finds dawn intolerable." "You realize you just told half the city you have a bomb and a schedule," I said. Wolf's eyes narrowed. "Yes, schedules are useful. Criminals are impatient." In the front room, Nina Dale sat with her hands clasped, eyes fixed on nothing. Hal Bristow sat across from her, briefcase on his lap like a shield. Fritz had served coffee and small cakes, as if sugar could calm a person who knows a police captain might decide she is inconvenient. Saul Panzer had taken a chair near the hall, quiet and watchful, because Saul does not believe in waiting alone. Night came down early, and the brownstone's lamps made warm islands in the darker sea of West 35th Street. Outside, traffic murmured. Inside, the house felt too still, as if it were listening for footsteps. At 10, the doorbell rang. Fritz went, returned, and announced, "Captain Dugan." Wolf's eyes narrowed, but his tone remained mild. "Bring him in." Captain Dugan entered without removing his coat, which was a signal in itself. Men who intend to stay remove their coats. Men who intend to control keep them on. He came into Wolf's office with the heavy certainty of a man used to rooms yielding. His grey eyes swept Wolf, then me, then the desk, as if he were taking inventory. "Wolf," he said, "we need to talk." "We are talking," Wolf replied. "Sit." Dugan did not sit. He remained standing, shoulders filling the space with authority. "I heard your message," Dugan said. Wolf's eyes narrowed. "I intended that." Dugan's jaw tightened. "You are putting yourself in danger." Wolf's tone was dry. "Captain Danger has visited this house many times. It has never been impressed." Dugan ignored it. "For your safety, you will stay put tonight. No visits, no deliveries, no leaving the house before dawn." I felt my eyebrows lift. There it was. Not a request, not advice. An order, dressed in concern. Wolf's eyes narrowed further. "You are issuing an instruction." Dugan's voice was controlled. Heavy. "Yes, I'm responsible for public order. Wolf. You release that file. You cause panic. People will act badly." Wolf looked at him with cold interest. "And you fear how they will act." Dugan's eyes hardened. "I fear chaos." Wolf's voice stayed calm. "Number you fear exposure." Dugan's face tightened. "Watch your mouth." Wolf did not move. "Captain Dugan, you are attempting to restrain me in my own home. That is not authority. That is fear outranking authority." The air in the room thickened. Dugan's eyes flashed. For an instant, the controlled captain slipped, and a frightened man looked out. Then the captain returned. "I'm doing you a favor," Dugan said, voice flat. "If you push this, you will not like the results." Wolf's gaze held steady. "Threats are also a symptom of fear." Dugan's eyes flicked toward the hallway, toward the front room where Nina sat. "Keep your people quiet, Wolf." Then he turned, and left as abruptly as he had arrived. Coat still on, dignity intact but strained. When Fritz closed the door, Wolf looked at me. "You see," Wolf said softly. "He came, he could not remain away." I nodded. "He ordered you to stay put." Wolf's mouth tightened. "Thus he has placed himself at the center of the circle." I went to the front room. Nina's gaze snapped up the moment I entered, as if she had been listening through the walls. "Was that him?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "Captain Dugan. He's worried about Wolf's bedtime." Nina swallowed. "He knows. He knows what Wolf announced," I said, "and he's scared enough to show up in person." Her hands tightened. Grant was right. Hal Bristow's voice was quiet. "This is escalating." "It's already escalated," I said. "We're just watching the smoke now." Nina's eyes were bright with something near tears, but her jaw was set. She looked at Wolf's office door, then at me. "I can't keep doing this," she said. "That's a reasonable thought," I replied. "Unreasonable circumstances have that effect." She swallowed hard. "He recorded him." I felt my stomach tighten. "Recorded who?" "Dugan," Nina whispered. "Grant recorded Captain Dugan taking cash." Bristow's face tightened, but he did not look surprised. He looked resigned, like a man who has been waiting for the inevitable to be spoken aloud. Nina's voice shook. "Grant met him in a back room at the Burrington Club. Dugan said it was a donation issue, a favor for a friend. Grant had the recorder in his pocket. He recorded the whole thing. Dugan took the envelope. He counted it with his thumb. He said, 'Good.' Then he said, 'Now we keep things clean.'" Bristow closed his eyes briefly. I said, "How do you know?" Nina's eyes filled. "Because Grant made me listen. He made me label it. He said, 'This is insurance. This is the reason nobody can touch us,' he said. If I ever doubted him, I should remember that voice. Where is the recording? I asked. Nina's mouth tightened. I don't know where the original is, but I know there were duplicates. My eyes flicked to Bristow. Bristow exhaled slowly. Mercer gave me duplicates. Yes. Wolf's voice came from the doorway. He had entered without my noticing, which is one of his tricks. You withheld this. Nina flinched. I was scared. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Fear is not an excuse. It is a reason. You have now provided a reason strong enough to kill. Nina's shoulders trembled. He made me part of it. Wolf's tone softened a fraction. Mercer made many people part of his corruption. You will now be part of its correction. Nina swallowed. The duplicates were sealed in the private guarantee file. Bristow kept it. Grant said it was safer with a lawyer. Wolf's eyes narrowed. And yet someone attempted to steal my empty envelope. Someone attempted to intimidate you. Someone attempted to stage Mercer's death. All this to retrieve what they feared. I said, so the file we claim to deliver at dawn is not just paper. It is a recording that names Dugan. Wolf's gaze held mine. Precisely, the trap is set. The thief will come. It was almost midnight when the house shifted. You can feel it when trouble approaches, not because of sixth senses, but because the air changes. Fritz had gone to bed. Saul remained in the hall chair. Wolf sat in his office, reading, as if murder were an annoyance that should not interrupt literature. He sat at my desk with my gun within reach, and my nerves doing small push-ups. At 12:20, there was a sound at the front steps. Not the bell, not a knock. A careful scrape, like a man testing a lock he believes he understands. Saul's head lifted slightly. That was my confirmation that I was not imagining it. I stood quietly and moved to the hall, keeping my footsteps light. Saul rose without a word. We positioned ourselves so we could see the front door without being seen from it. Wolf remained in his office, because Wolf believes movement is for lesser mammals. The scrape came again. Then the faint click of metal. Someone had a key. The door eased open. A shadow slid in, careful, familiar with the house. Not a burglar stumbling into unknown rooms, but a man who knew where to go. He closed the door softly and moved toward Wolf's office. I stepped out of the darkness and said, looking for something. The shadow froze. Then he turned slightly, and the hall light caught his face. Detective Lou Marat. I recognized him from precinct visits. He was one of Captain Dugan's men, mid-30s, sharp eyes, the kind of detective who smiles at you while he searches your pockets. He wore plain clothes and gloves. In his hand was a small leather pouch, the kind used for documents. His eyes widened a fraction, then tightened. Goodwin, Marat, I said. Did Dugan lend you the key, or did you borrow it from his conscience? Marat's jaw tightened. Move. Saul shifted, silent but present. Marat's gaze flicked to Saul, and I saw the calculation. 2 men, 1 exit, 1 objective. You came for Wolf's file, I said. Marat's voice was low. You don't know what you're mixed up in. That's a lie, I said. We know exactly. You're here because dawn is coming. Marat's hand moved slightly, and I moved faster. I do not claim virtue, but I claim speed. I stepped in, grabbed his wrist, and drove my shoulder into his chest. He staggered back into the wall. The leather pouch dropped. Saul caught it with one hand, as if he had been expecting it. Marat cursed and tried to swing. I hit him where conversation ends and cooperation begins. He went down on one knee, breath hissing. I kept my gun pointed at him without firing it. Wolf dislikes gunfire in the house. It unsettles the orchids. Easy, I said. This is a brownstone, not a battlefield. Marat's eyes were furious. You think you've won. I think you've broken in, I replied. That's a simpler problem. Footsteps came from the office. Wolf appeared in the doorway, face heavy, eyes narrowed, robe absent, suit immaculate. He looked down at Marat like an entomologist observing a beetle. Detective Marat, Wolf said calmly, you have made a poor choice. Marat glared up. Wolf, you don't understand. Captain Dugan is trying to protect you. Wolf's mouth tightened. He is protecting himself. Saul held up the pouch. He came for this. Wolf's gaze sharpened. So the thief is one of Dugan's own detectives. That is useful. Mara's breathing was harsh. You can't prove anything. Wolf's eyes narrowed to slits. You have proven it by entering my house with a key and attempting to steal what you believed I possessed. Now we will add the final proof with a gathering in my office at dawn. I looked down at Mara. You picked the wrong night to go shopping. Mara's eyes flicked toward the door, toward escape, toward hope. There was none. The trap had been sprung, not by force but by fear, and the man most protected had just sent one of his own to steal the thing he could not afford, to let reach daylight. Chapter 10. By 5:30 in the morning, the brownstone on West 35th Street had the feel of a courtroom that had been built inside a kitchen. Fritz was awake and offended, because dawn gatherings violate every civilized rule he respects. But he still produced coffee that could have revived a corpse with self-respect. The house lights were on. The street outside was gray and quiet. Even New York, for a few minutes, pretended it could behave. In the office, Nero Wolfe sat in his red leather chair like the law's conscience had gained weight and decided to stay. He looked massive, calm, and annoyed, which is Wolfe's version of ready. I sat at my desk with a fresh bruise on my knuckles and Detective Lou Mara in a chair across from me, wrists restrained, jaw clenched, eyes darting. Saul Panzer stood near the door, silent as a shadow that had learned manners. Nina Dale sat in the yellow chair, hands clasped, face pale but steady. Hal Bristow sat rigidly, briefcase on the floor beside him like an oath. He looked like a man who had spent his life protecting other men's sins and had finally realized sins have no loyalty. Inspector Kramer arrived at 5:45, hat in hand, scowl preheated. "What is this?" he demanded, eyes sweeping the room. "Wolfe, you dragged me out of bed for breakfast and a bound detective." Wolfe's tone was mild. "I have dragged you out of bed for justice. Inspector, breakfast is merely courtesy." Kramer snorted and looked at Mara. "Mara, what the hell?" Mara's jaw tightened. "Inspector." Kramer's eyes narrowed. "You want to explain why you're sitting in Wolfe's house at dawn with your hands tied?" Mara's gaze flicked toward the door, as if hoping it would open and let him escape his own stupidity. "It did not," Wolfe said. "We are waiting for Captain Dugan." Kramer's face darkened. "Dugan?" Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Yes, he will come because he must." It was 6 on the dot when the doorbell rang, sharp and impatient. Fritz admitted Captain Dugan, and Dugan came in with his coat on again, as if he had never left and had decided the night required more authority. He stepped into Wolfe's office and stopped when he saw Mara restrained. For the first time since I had met him, Captain Dugan's eyes changed. Not much. Just enough. He looked at Mara, then at Kramer, then at Wolfe. The muscles in his jaw tightened and released, like a man swallowing anger and finding it doesn't go down clean. "Wolfe," Dugan said, voice deep. "What is this?" Wolfe's gaze was steady. "It is the consequence of your protection, Captain." Dugan's eyes hardened. "Release my detective." Kramer barked a laugh. Harsh. "Your detective in Wolfe's house. Great, I'm thrilled." Dugan ignored him. His eyes stayed on Wolfe. "You have no right to detain a police officer." Wolfe's voice was calm. "I have every right to detain a burglar." Dugan took a step forward, and the room tightened. Saul shifted slightly near the door. I kept my hands near my drawer. Kramer's face was a storm cloud. Wolfe did not move. "Captain Dugan," Wolfe said, "you have a choice." Dugan's mouth tightened. "I don't take choices from civilians." Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "You will take this one. You can arrest Detective Mara for burglary and conspiracy, and in doing so admit your own involvement in the pipeline of payoffs Mercer discovered. Or you can attempt to fight, obstruct, and threaten, and you will drown in the pipeline you have been drinking from." Dugan's eyes went cold. "You're accusing me." Wolfe's tone remained mild. "I am presenting you with options." Kramer stepped forward, Scowl. Deep. Dugan, what the hell is going on? Dugan's gaze flicked to Kramer, and I saw contempt there, quickly buried. Kramer, this is above your pay grade. Kramer's face reddened. Try saying that again. Wolf raised a hand slightly. Inspector, allow the captain to display his character. It is instructive. Dugan turned back to Wolf. You think you can threaten me with your little file? Wolf's eyes narrowed further. I can threaten you with certainty. Dugan's jaw tightened. You don't have anything. Wolf's mouth compressed. You sent Detective Mara to steal it. Dugan's eyes flicked, one involuntary blink. That blink was the crack in his armor. Wolf spoke into it. Captain, if you were innocent, you would have welcomed Dawn and the district attorney. Instead, you tried to confine me, you attempted to steer the investigation, you leaned on witnesses, and you sent your own detective into my home. Fear has outranked authority for you, that is why you are here. Dugan's face hardened. Mara acted on his own. Kramer snarled. Bull. Mara's head lifted slightly, and I saw the moment he realized he had been abandoned. The most protected man had just tried to shed him like a dirty glove. Wolf's gaze shifted to Mara. Detective, you have also a choice. You may remain loyal to a man who has just denied you, or you may tell the truth and salvage what remains of your future. Mara's mouth tightened. I didn't kill Mercer. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Number, you arranged the staging, you facilitated the removal, you acted as the hands, not the mind. Mara's eyes flicked to Dugan, then away, his breathing quickened. The room waited. Nina's voice, small but steady, broke the silence. Grant recorded you, Captain. Dugan's head snapped toward her, his eyes flashed, and in that flash his fear showed naked. Shut up, he said. Nina flinched, then held her chin up. He recorded you taking cash. Dugan's face tightened. You don't know what you're talking about. Bristow spoke quietly. The first time he had sounded almost human. She does, and so do I. Dugan's gaze cut to Bristow. Sharp, careful, counselor. Bristow's lips pressed. I have been careful. That is why Mercer trusted me to hold duplicates. Kramer stared at Bristow. Duplicates of what? Wolf answered. Recordings of payoffs, names, dates, a map, and evidence sufficient to destroy Captain Dugan's protection. Kramer's face went from red to pale to red again. Dugan. Dugan's voice was deep and controlled, but the control was thinning. Kramer, you have no idea what kind of storm you're inviting. Wolf's tone was flat. The storm already exists. You have merely been standing under an umbrella that belongs to other men. He looked at Mara again. Detective, speak. Mara's jaw worked. He swallowed, then said it fast, like ripping cloth. Mercer was killed to stop the recordings from becoming evidence, he said. His eyes stayed on the rug, because looking at faces would have made it real. He thought he could trade names at midnight and make everyone back off. The captain said no. He said Mercer was unstable and dangerous. Dugan barked, You're lying. Mara flinched, then pushed on. The order came down. Mercer had to be stopped. We didn't plan it in the car. We picked him up earlier. We told him we needed to talk. He came because he thought he was protected. He wasn't. Kramer's voice was hoarse. Who killed him? Mara swallowed. A contractor, the maintenance man, Eddie Sloan. The one with the work order. He had access, he had a way in. He poisoned Mercer in the car while it was parked off route. Then we staged the discovery, swapped plates, parked it where it would be found. Kramer's face twisted, and the file. Mara's eyes flicked toward Wolf's desk, then back down. We took the contents because they pointed to the recordings. Steam, a thin blade under the seam, then a careful reseal while it was still warm. The captain said it had to be disposed of cleanly, no loose ends. Wolf's eyes narrowed. Clean disposal. Mara nodded, miserable. The captain routed the contents to Bristow. Bristow's head snapped up. Not directly. Wolf's gaze cut to him. Mr. Bristow. Bristow's face tightened. Mercer gave me duplicates weeks ago. I did not receive anything from Mara. Mara's eyes lifted. Desperate, not the duplicates, the original contents, the private guarantee packet Mercer carried. We couldn't destroy it ourselves. Too risky, the captain said. Lawyers know how to make paper disappear without smoke. He said Bristow would do it. Bristow's mouth opened, then closed. His eyes flicked to Wolf, and I saw the truth. He might not have received it directly, but he knew the request had come, and he had not reported it. Wolf's voice was calm, deadly. Mr. Bristow, you have just heard yourself described as a sanitation service for murderers. Bristow's shoulders sagged. I was contacted, he admitted quietly. Not by Mara, by a man who claimed to represent interests. He implied if I did not cooperate, the estate would be destroyed. Wolf's eyes narrowed. And did you cooperate? Bristow's face was grey. I delayed. Kramer snarled. You sat on evidence. Bristow swallowed. I didn't know Mercer was already dead when the call came. Wolf's tone remained flat. Ignorance is also a form of cowardice. Dugan's voice dropped. Dangerous. Wolf, you think this ends with a speech? Wolf regarded him, heavy and calm. It ends with handcuffs. Dugan's eyes flashed. You have nothing solid. Wolf's mouth tightened. Archie. I opened my desk drawer and took out a large envelope, thick and plain, sealed with tape, and marked with a simple label in my handwriting, Da Delivery. Dawn, I placed it on Wolf's desk. Wolf did not touch it. He looked at Dugan. The real duplicates are already copied and sealed for the district attorney. They will be delivered at dawn. As promised, they were paid for with the only currency I respect. Dugan's eyes narrowed. Money. Wolf's voice was cold. Certainty. Kramer stared at the envelope as if it were a live grenade. You already copied them. Wolf nodded once. Yes, I do not gamble with evidence. Dugan's gaze snapped between Wolf and the envelope. His breathing changed. He was calculating whether he could reach it, destroy it, or intimidate the room into surrender. He could not. Saul was at the door. Kramer was already moving. I had my gun in my drawer and my patience gone. Kramer stepped forward, face set like stone. Dugan. Dugan's jaw tightened. Kramer. Don't be stupid. Kramer's voice was rough. I've been called stupid by better men than you. Turn around. Dugan hesitated, and in that hesitation, the last of his protection leaked away. He was a captain in a brownstone, not a god in a precinct. Kramer took a step closer. Turn around. Dugan's shoulders stiffened. For a second I thought he might swing first. The way Wolf said frightened men do. Then he saw Saul. Then he saw Mara's face, ruined and pleading. Then he saw the sealed envelope on Wolf's desk, inevitable as sunrise. He turned. Kramer cuffed him with a grim satisfaction that made my teeth ache. The click of metal sounded like the city exhaling. Mara slumped, eyes closing. Nina began to cry quietly, not from fear now, but from relief that had nowhere else to go. Bristow sat very still, as if waiting for the law to decide whether it would swallow him next. Wolf watched it all with the serene expression of a man who has restored order to a room that did not deserve it. When Kramer hauled Dugan toward the door, Dugan's head snapped back once, eyes burning at Wolf. This isn't over, he said. Wolf's tone was mild, almost bored. Captain, it has been over for some time. You simply refuse to read the conclusion. The door closed behind them, and the house seemed to settle, as if the walls had been holding tension in their plaster. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my eyes. Well, that's one pipeline clogged. Wolf's gaze shifted to me. Pipelines do not clog, Archie, they reroute. But we have at least forced this one into daylight. Nina stood shakily. Grant. He started this. Wolf regarded her. Grant Mercer started nothing noble. He merely amassed receipts. He attempted to use them as currency. He failed. Bristow's voice was hollow. So blackmail was just a tool. Wolf nodded once. Blackmail is merely a receipt. Murder is the signature. I looked around the office. At the empty chairs, the bruised faces, the sealed envelope waiting for dawn, and Wolf sitting like a judge who had eaten well. Outside, the sky over Manhattan was turning pale, and the city was preparing to pretend it had never been frightened. Wolf lifted his beer, finally appearing as if Fritz had granted it permission to exist, and took a sip. Then he said, quietly, to no one and everyone, "The trouble with men who trade in secrets is that they always forget one secret. They are mortal." That was the end of the case, and if it was not the end of corruption, that was not Wolf's problem. It was New York's.